Hello and welcome, DCL fans. This is your host, King05, and today I'm going to be going over how I won the DCL, the Draft Champions League. Now, obviously, my team is the Infernal Armory. I could go over the whole roster, but just to keep it a brief introduction, this is the team on the right side. This is what our final starting roster was for the playoffs. We played Band Chasers in the finals. We beat them 5-2. This VGC game was not reported. Lemuro did lose to Michael, but he never posted the replay because the series was over. But anyway, so we did end up winning the title, and I had a personal record of 6-2. So, or 6-3, sorry, 6-3. So I just want to go over all of my prep, how I prepped, how I played, and just go over the whole tournament in general. This is going to be a much more comprehensive video of the process of what it looks like to actually try hard in one of these team tournaments. So let's actually look at the DCL doc real quick. This is the drafting doc. I want the actual main doc. Here we go. So if we go to the... I'm just going to do a quick overview on the main draft that I used, which is going to be SV2. Now right here. Alright, so this team went 7-1. Some of that's me, some of that is some of my teammates using the team, but the main idea is I really rate Urshifu Rapid Strike as a TERA user, so for years I've wanted to really draft around this, and finally got an opportunity to do that with Meowscarada Terapagos. Meowscarada and Urshifu have really excellent offensive synergy. Everything that comes on Meow gets U-turned, and then Urshifu is like a free hit, you know what I'm saying? So that's something this team is like really good at, getting that momentum into their Urshifu, letting Urshifu do its thing. There's a lot of support for it. There's screens healing Wish, there's spikes and screens on Klefki, there's Prankster T-Wave to slow stuff down because it's not the fastest Pokemon in the world. Terapagos handles the hazards, you know, because you're not ever really running boots on Urshifu, you're running protective pads like 90% of the time, as you'll see in the prep. Anyways, Terapagos is a great win con. I have two rockers being Terapagos and Clodsire, because Clodsire doesn't want to come every week, so having Terapagos as that backup option, as well as it can be a win con if you need. There's multiple win cons on this team, right? CM, Latias, SD Urshifu, any kind of Terapagos really, Spin, Calm Mind, Rock Polish, whatever. Moltres I found to be really excellent in this whole tournament. Really enjoyed using this thing. It's a great fairy check. It's one of the best in the format, honestly, and as a TERA user, you can get a little bit creative with it, although with this team I'm pretty sure we're just going to be tearing Urshifu Rapid most of the time. In a few mocks I did end up tearing Moltres, but, you know, I don't think I ended up tearing it in any official games. Clodsire is like, and Sableye, these are mons that are not that great, but on this team in specific, they give pretty much everything that we need, right? So, in terms of like utility, it's really hard to prep against this team. You have the emergency button with Terapagos, so if anything really gets out of hand, you can use that Terra Shell alongside Boots to make sure it's not broken. It kind of functions similar to a Dragonite in that sense, where if you really need it to check something, it can usually do the job. And if you don't have to check anything, you can use that ability more offensively, enable your setup towards an endgame sweep, something like that. So a great Pokemon to have on these like kinds of teams. Latias, a great support, but Clodsire and Sableye, right? I was talking about that. It's really hard to prep into Prankster T-Wave, Prankster Encore, Unaware, and then like you have Meowscarada to revenge a bunch of stuff, and then you still have to switch into things like Meowscarada to Rap or Shifu. Even Specs Latias is a great Pokemon. And Moltres as well, great offense. So it's like such a good balanced team. You can run any style with this. You can run balance, maybe not stall, right? But no one really runs stall in draft, and that's for a very good reason. So, especially in SV. So you can run like a balanced build. You can bring your Clodsire, your Moltres, your Klefki, kind of just outbulk the opponent if the matchup calls for it. Alternatively, you can go on the offensive, you know, more focus around these top four with offensive sets, and then two Pokemon, take your pick to support them. You're going to see a lot of that top 4 plus 2 kind of build. Klefki was really nice as it's has a lot of resist. That Steel Fairy typing is so elite. The base stats are not too great on this guy, but the utility is just amazing. Being able to influence Terras with Klefki is pretty nice, because a lot of times they're not going to run Terras that are weak to T-Wave or like Prankster in general. Like TERA Dark is really hard to run here though, because the Urshifu Rapid just kind of preys on that really easily. So you see how this is like really hard to prep for. Now a lot of my teammates were doubters at the beginning, like during the draft. They were like, this looks a little wonky, but then they started mocking against it and they were like, how do we ever beat this? It's so impossible. And there's a reason why it's 7-1, you know? It just kind of has everything. Yeah. So that's kind of the main team I used. But for the first week, we are going to be in Oras. So this is up against, who is this against? This is against Sablo. Alright. So Sablo is rocking up with this Garchomp kind of build. And I have this really cool, honestly, Greninja, Mega Gallade, Scizor, Lando, like top 4 based kind of thing. And then you have your support options. You have, you know, potential Rock Strudagon, Spike's Quillfish. You know, both of these are great helmet users. Togekiss is very, very versatile in Oras. It can be pretty much anything and do well. Scarf, maybe even a Babiri for Scizor. It's a great Garchomp check, generally speaking. I think in this game it was Scarf, just because Dazzling Gleam is really nice overall if I'm able to get rid of the Scizor, which, you know, I can obviously handle with the combination of like a few helmets. Greninja can also check it pretty well. I have a very bulky Mega Gallade this week as well. So there's a lot of things that the Scizor has to deal with. So if I'm able to get rid of that, Togekiss is able to outspeed the whole team and there's no Dazzling Gleam resist. And then, of course, Scarf Air Slash can sometimes, you know, do its thing. We have an HP Steel as well for the Mega Diancie. Let's look at the prep real quick. Yeah, so I was Scarf Togekiss with HP Steel. Heal Bell last because a lot of times my Mega Gallade ended up taking a like a status. You know, I am Substitute, very, very bulky, but sometimes that wasn't quite enough to avoid the status. So this was like a nice backup option. So I actually don't have any helmets for Scizor, so maybe I was waffling a little bit there, but I do have a HP Fire Scizor of my own with Aqua Berry, so this is especially defensive, but HP Fire is going to cover the opposing Scizor quite well. Landorus, this EV spread is very, very, very bulky. What was this for again? Oh, this was for like a Starmie Ice Beam or Hydro Pump or something like that. It was like very, very especially defensive. So like Lando can eat one from a non-boosting item on Starmie, I'm pretty sure that's what it was for. As well as like Rotom Wash, right? Rotom Wash is not, it's like a Calm Mind thing kind of benchmark. Like if I Calm Mind on the Rotom switch, then I Calm Mind again, Hydro Pump is not a 2-hit KO on me if I'm +2 Spadef. And then +2 Sludge Wave is obviously going to knock this thing back. I decided I didn't need any speed really at all, because if you look at this matchup, everything is either going to be faster than me, or they're just not going to run speed, right? Maybe the Drapion is going to be able to outspeed me, but Drapion is never going to be your initial Lando check, you know what I mean? So I felt pretty safe going very slow on this Landorus, as those bulk things are very important. As well as Rotom Wash, it's very, very pressured this week to be max special defense. It can't really afford to run much speed if it wants to avoid the 3-hit KO from like Greninja or something, or, you know, the 2-hit KO from Landorus Sludge Wave. Stuff like that is super important for Rotom here, so I felt it could not afford speed, and thus I was very, very greedy with my Lando spread. So that's kind of like seeing the opportunity and then taking it. It's still modest 108, and it's so bulky. Like, you see this? This was like absolutely demolishing in mocks as well, by the way. And Mega Gallade, this set is also pretty slow, a little bit faster than Lando, but not by a whole lot. Max HP, very, very physically defensive with Adamant 40 attack. Now this was for some roll. Let me see if I remember. It was like +2 Drain Punch after rocks into max HP Rotom, if I remember correctly. As well as like Shadow Sneak does a ton to Starmie. Like 2 rounds of rocks, I believe it was, and it dies to Shadow Sneak. Then everything else is like physical, or it's like Mega Diancie, right? And Mega Diancie was not having a lot of opportunity to get off its Mega versus me and Mox. It either has to protect and, you know, give up maybe a Calm Mind, because I am leading Landorus this match. If it leads into Diancie, I'm going to Calm Mind, because you either switch because of Oras mechanics or you protect. There's no other play that Diancie can even consider here. So Calm Mind was my set play into Diancie. So either I got a huge advantage turn 1, or they didn't lead Diancie, and my Mega Gallade was like a little bit more threatening because, you know, whereas speed mechanics, I can sub on a protect if I predict that, and then Drain Punch is able to knock it out. So there's a lot of ways to outplay Mega Diancie with this team. Yeah. But anyways, Specs Greninja, this is kind of something that I noticed. If there's no throw, then all of a sudden I kind of click my buttons and it does a lot of damage. As you can see, like the dark resists are pretty poverty. They don't really take surf that well. So the combination of my two stabs kind of hits everything. And they're like being Specs because it allows me to take a bullet punch from Scizor and actually KO it from high HP. Also eases predictions where, like, you know, sometimes Garchomp is in. I don't really want to Ice Beam into Rotom Wash, but if I'm Specs, you know, sometimes it's going to be in Dark Pulse range, and I can just click that mid-ground a little bit easier. So I found Specs to be pretty good unless they bring the throw. Then it's like, you kind of have to U-turn on that and break through in alternate ways. But yeah, Druddigon here is actually Rough Skin. It's not Mold Breaker to get rocks up through the Magic Bounce. But what I am is Roselli Berry with Iron Head. So if the matchup into Diancie does come out, I am Max Spadef Roselli, so it's really a favorable thing for me. Especially considering I want that removed if it is able to get that Mega off for my Mega Glade. So you see, this is all kind of like built towards this like Mega Glade, Greninja, and Togekiss. These are my three endgame pieces, and everything is kind of designed to make sure they can do their thing, or at least, you know, these things help each other break down some stuff. Like Greninja breaks down the Rotom Wash, all of a sudden my Togekiss is opened up, stuff like that. As well as like Landorus and Gren, they both share the same checks in this game. It's the throw and the Rotom. So one can break for the other. That's kind of like the game plan going in. Now let's look into the actual game. As you can see, there is no throw, so this is good news for my Greninja and for my Lando, as like AV throw, especially defensive throw, is very actually quite good into those things. So the thing about throw though is that it does give a sub to my Mega Gallade, which was like a way I was winning a lot of mocks. So I was kind of hoping for the throw in that sense where I can just U-turn it and get my sub up and do a lot of damage with Gallade, but I think he probably came to the similar conclusion in mocks where throw is kind of a liability here. So can't say I blame him. This team though, you see this, it's kind of like top 6. There's no Quilladin, pretty much expected, right? And like I said, I am going to lead off with my Landorus, as they lead off with Starmie. Now I could stay in and take one, but I don't know if it's Life Orb. I just want to go Gren. You're never going to T-Bolt into a Lando turn 1, so Gren felt pretty safe. If it is Colbur Berry, I'm perfectly fine taking the chip on this thing. It'll put it in range of +2 Shadow Sneak, which is, of course, the win con I'm going towards this whole game. That's the main one anyways. I could also go for a Scarf Togekiss sweep, but Megalade is the primary win con of this team. Now I go Landorus on this Rotom Wash as a pump comes out. I was totally expecting a Volt Switch here, which is why I made that aggressive play, but even then I'm still able to get a little bit of chip here. Rotom is now in range of Dark Pulse after Rocks, so if I get Rocks up, able to keep them up through the spin, then it's nice. I get my Mega off here pretty early. I go for sub as the Drapion comes in, but the Drapion is faster. So this is something that I wasn't really expecting, but of course it's just good prep on his part. He recognizes that I'm going to greed these speed EVs, so he's a little bit faster on the Drapion. This could also just be a taunt for like a faster Quillfish. That would make sense. So I get it, but the knockoff is not going to break my sub. So this Drapion is going to get 1v1'd by my Mega Gallade. Here a knockoff comes out as I Drain Punch again. But here I believe I SD. Don't I? I'm pretty sure I SD, because I think the T-Spikes are going up. No, I don't. I'm ass. Yeah, I was pretty sure T-Spikes are going up because I don't have my Quillfish with me, and he's not going to sack his Drapion without getting T-Spikes, so I really didn't think a taunt was coming. I could have subbed, I could have SD'd. Maybe sub was correct, but I did go for the Drain Punch, kind of covers everything reasonably well. Now T-Spikes are up. I'm going to have to find some way to get the Defog off. Do I even have Defog? I don't even remember. No, I don't have Defog. So these T-Spikes are up to stay. This is so unlucky. But Scizor is going to come in, U-turn on the Garchomp. And now what? Togekiss comes in. I can go for a free Dazzling Gleam. This reveals Scarf Chomp, but crucially it does not reveal Scarf Togekiss. So I know he's Scarf Toxic, but he doesn't know anything about my side. He goes in Diancie. I'm fine taking some chip on this. He goes for Rocks, and maybe a little bit greedy, because this is going to be a 2-hit KO. I do reveal Scarf here, so Scizor could come in. I'm going to predict that with my own Scizor here, as he stays into Moonblast. Now, this was maybe a little bit of an over-prediction on my part. I did kind of need HP on this Scizor to check the opposing Scizor, as now you're going to see Superpower. I'm actually in range now. Maybe I was in range anyways, though, because it turns out to be Life Orb. But anyways, Mega Blade is going to come in with the defense drop and the physical bulk that I have. I am able to just Drain Punch here, pretty safely revenge kill this, force it out at least. Starmie comes in, but here I'm going to SD, I believe. Yeah, SD on the switch. Now, if he just attacked there, that could have been really bad for me, right? Because Scizor is looking really, really good in this end game. If it gets a SD up, I basically lose on the spot because Greninja took that chip earlier and the rocks are up. Because this Dredagon is not physically defensive, it actually dies after rocks to Life Orb Bug Bite or Life Orb Superpower. So that's tough, right? I did lose my HP Fire Scizor, and my Gallade is chipped and my Greninja is chipped. So all of those together means Scizor is like #1 threat. So I can't go into anything passive that allows an SD. Now he's trying to catch me switching out here, preserving my Gallade, but I'm just going to SD as it's my best way of keeping up offensive pressure. I Drain Punch here, and I have Shadow Sneak for the Starmie. And this Scizor, even with Life Orb, I'm very physically defensive. It only does 38%. I'm able to drain this all back. Knocks this out. Gallade is so strong and bulky, and now a Shadow Sneak is going to take out the Starmie. So as you can see, I worked towards a Mega Gallade endgame. I kind of built around chipping down the stuff that checks it. Like you saw, I was able to just Dazzling Gleam into the Mega Diancie, giving up my Togekiss potentially. In exchange for that chip though, now my Mega Gallade can, you know, potentially SD, and it's in range of Shadow Sneak. So that sort of stuff, that sort of gameplay, game plan was really good here. Alright, let's go into the next game. Now this is going to be SV, and we're going to see quite a few SV games in a row now. This is up against 64 Squares. Mostly a Smogon tournament player, but he was on my team for US West. We did win the Draft League World Cup earlier this year, so I know he's like not a bad player, you know. He can kind of hold his own in the draft scene. So I'm not really taking this too lightly. Even, you know, the name value is not quite there compared to like some of the other players in DCL. So I'm using this this God Squad, this Meowscarada Urshifu Rapid kind of thing. Now into this team, what did I end up bringing here? So I have Scarf Meowscarada, Punching Glove Urshifu. This is going to be a very common set. Very bulky here, Max Spadef. I have Calm Mind Latias with max HP. This was like a Iron Moth check, because I don't really have anything better to do into Iron Moth. Like if it's just Terrify or Overheat, Latias is the only switch in. Clodsire is not able to take 2 of those. Moltres even. If I'm specially defensive, sure, but Sludge Wave is going to do quite a bit to this thing. Latias can at least Speed Tie, threaten the Psychic there, able to roost up on that potentially. So it's a little bit safer, and I can Calm Mind alongside. It's a little bit more threatening offensively as well. I found a lot of mocks ended up with Latias just Calm Mind and Dragon Pulsing through the whole team. I am Dragon Pulse Psyshock, so just dual stab, as I don't really think the Fortress is going to be able to 1v1 my Latias. I'm completely disrespecting that thing. I'd rather have Psyshock for a Calm Mind War into the Sinistra, or to hit the Iron Moth a little bit harder on the physical side, because its physical defense is quite low compared to its special defense. Let's see. So Dragonite here, pretty scary, honestly. But I do have Terapagos as like a Terra Shell option, as well as like Sableye. It's really hard to build Dragonite into Sableye because Will-O-Wisp with Prankster, you have Encore for DD. It's like really annoying. And as you can see, I am the Sableye set with Encore Will-O-Wisp. I am Nightshade here, just does really good consistent damage to his team. And this EV spread is so that I can always take a Choice Banded Outrage, if I remember correctly. So like a +1 Outrage, I can be able to Will-O-Wisp. It does less than half if I burn it, and if he just attacks, then I'm able to Will-O-Wisp. So this calc does quite a few things. So +1 is 1.5 times, right? So if I switch in, I don't know if it was Outrage or Dragon Claw. It could have been Dragon Claw calc, but whatever. It's a calc of some kind, and I'll explain the concept behind it. If I switch in on that move, and he just attacks raw, then it'll do 66% max. If I'm able to Will-O-Wisp it, it'll then do 33% max, and I'll live on 1, and I can get off the recover. So this kind of covers this, and I'm able to recover at least back up to like, I think the minimum HP I'd end up in that sequence is like, I guess I would end up 33% if he attacks and then switches on the Will-O-Wisp, but I can recover versus a lot of his team. So it's not even that big of an issue, as I do have a lot of special defense EVs. But yeah, this kind of like, denies the Dragonite from getting its DD turn immediately. He kind of has to play around Sableye. But like I was saying, it's really annoying to play against this team. Now, especially defensive Urshifu Rapid with SD3 attacks, including Ice Punch. Ice Punch obviously for Sinistra, but everything else kind of folds to the dual stabs, right? Fortress, you know, it's a physical wall that can't really 1v1 my Urshifu Rapid. Now, I'm actually Terra Dragon. Why am I Terra Dragon here? Terra Dragon is for the Greninja resist, for the Rotom Wash resist, as well as like the fire resist for Iron Moth. I don't lose out on that, so it's like a pretty good defensive typing. The Sinistra grass resist is nice, so it just kind of like resists a bunch of stuff. You are a little bit weaker to Dragonite, but Dragonite doesn't want to take an Ice Punch to the dome, and I do expect Dragonite to be a little bit slower than my Urshifu Rapid. I still have 100 speed, and if you look at my team, you only need to creep Meowscarada at +1 if you're going to do that, and if you do that, you're going to be slower than my Urshifu Rapid. I'm pretty sure anyways. It's been a while since this game, so I don't remember the exact EVs all the time, but I'm pretty sure it's for that. Like, I crept that by a few points. And then outside of that, you don't need speed for anything else. Like, Terapagos is going to outspeed you if it wants to anyways, and then these 3 Pokemon are not running speed ever. But I felt this Dragonite would be very, very bulky if it was a Dragon Dance. So for that reason, my Urshifu's kind of aggro creeping that. Then I am Punching Glove because, you know, obviously Punching Glove allows me to avoid these rocky helmets. It's just a great move on Urshifu Rapid. You get a 1.1 times boost, so it's basically double Adamant Nature if you think about it that way. It's able to do a lot of damage. Drain Punch gets my HP back. By investing little into my HP and a lot into my SPDEF, Drain Punch actually gives me more effective recovery, as well as I take special hits quite well. The natural physical bulk on this thing is good enough where you can often get away with spreads like this. And yeah, so Scarf Meowscarada, what was this for? This was just to revenge Battle Bond Greninja, it looks like, as well as make a +1 Iron Moth, like booster speed kind of thing. A DD Dragonite as well. I'm able to take a E-Speed and just triple axle it back. Doesn't matter if multi-scale's up, triple axle will go through that. And then this was like the main star of the show, right? Terapagos. When I found this set in Mox, it was like, hallelujah, right? This is going to be a lead Terapagos. And this is going to get the ball rolling in a huge way, right? You want to get the rocks up, and you want to Toxic this Ting-Lu. This Ting-Lu is so annoying for my team. It doesn't matter that I have Meowscarada and Urshifu Rapid. It's still so annoying. Just setting up hazards, whirlwinding, you know, Ruination. It's so hard to switch into consistently for my team. So, like, getting rid of it, or at least toxing it early, allows my CM Latios to actually beat it 1v1 and like kind of comfortably work towards that Latios win path, right? Because in this game, Latios is going to be my main win condition, even though it's also tasked with switching in on Iron Moth. So like if it goes down, I can also pivot to an Urshifu Rapid Sweep kind of endgame. It does have the nice defensive Terra SD options there, but my main goal is to CM sweep with Latios if possible. Meowscarada to revenge, and then, you know, obviously Klefki and Sableye to disrupt, you know, set spikes. This is physically defensive Klefki. What's this for? This is for Dragonite, of course. Not much else really. But this is like the 2 Mon-Core to like stop D-Knight, because that's the #1 scariest thing into my team. Sorry, wrong tab. But the other scary thing is like Sinistra. If it was like Terra Dark to be immune to Encore, that could be pretty scary. So I do have to worry about that. But if I'm able to T-Wave it, that limits its turns. If I'm able to Toxic it with Terapagos, that also will limit it. So I have a few options to kind of like neuter it, as well as Urshifu Rapid with Terra Dragon can SD alongside. The only thing I really fear is like a Machagacha burn, which is pretty low likelihood. But anyways, that's going to be the team. Let's get into the actual game. So let's swap POV. As you see, what did he bench? There is no Carbink, and there is no Dragonite. So they actually benched Dragonite in this team, which means I don't actually need my Sableye and my Klefki quite as bad as I would have if they brought it. So I'm able to be a little bit more liberal with my usage of them. They're not that important. I can kind of throw them into attacks, save HP on my important guys, which is going to be the top 4. So that's what I see immediately on the team preview. And let's just get into the game, right? Let's look at the Terra preview here. On the opposing side, this is going to be Terra Fire Moth, which we expected. and then TERA Poison on the Sinistra. Whoops. But anyways, leads off with Fortress, as I lead off with Terapagos. Like I said, he has to fear the Flamethrower, which I think I'm just going to go for, right? Force this thing out, or like it takes 99 in exchange for a hazard, which could get spun the next turn anyways. He actually burned the Ting Lu, which would have been bad, but he has Lumberry, so I'm able to Toxic it next turn anyways. So, cool. But yeah, I'm leftovers, so if he's not careful, I will get a second round of Terra Shell, so he's going to have to be a little bit careful switching around. Rotom comes in, but I'm perfectly happy to chip this, right? I'm just going to stay in and probably go for, what, a Terra Starstorm. He ends up being faster. Was I running any speed on this thing? 16 speed, so he would have outsped pretty much no matter what, right? So I wasn't really aiming to outspeed Rotom Wash, but just get off a Terra Starstorm if he wants to Hydro Pump or like T-Wave, Will-O-Wisp, something like that to prevent my Terapagos from, you know, being as big of a threat. Then I would be able to Terra Starstorm the Rotom, and then that opens up my Urshifu a little bit nicer. As of course, from full, it's a little bit tough into Rotom Wash if it's physically defensive. But here I Starstorm into Ting Lu as he paybacks. So this is actually really, really great. The Ting Lu got 0 hazards, and my Terapagos came out at 63%, 64 after leftovers. So Iron Moth comes in, but I do have my Latios here, able to take on this Terrafire Overheat. We know it's not Specs because it has Boots, didn't take hazards. So my Latios actually super walls this thing, which is actually so nice. I was really worried about Specs. Here I double into Terapagos, predicting a switch out here into the Fortress. I wanted to catch that on the double, get off another turn, because as you can see, he doesn't really switch into Terapagos well at all. So I'm able to get leftovers and force it out, potentially. That would have been really, really nice. However, a U-turn comes out. Unfortunate, didn't really expect that to happen, like risking the speed tie on your Iron Moth. But I guess he can do that because I do reveal max HP. Probably not going to be too much damage that he's taking, even if he loses the speed tie. So I get the play, it's just not what I was expecting. Terapagos, though, is able to stay in on this Gren. Ice Beam does a lot. I believe that reveals it to be Choice Specs, though. So I go Klefki. Like I said, this Klefki is not that important. I can use it here to kind of just switch in on Gren. Maybe even like T-Wave get up Spikes. But here I just Dazzling Gleam. No big deal. This would potentially give a spin turn to Fortress, but I have the Sableye, which, like I said, I don't really need for too much in this game. So I'm able to block the spin, which is at least a little bit useful, right? And now I can just go over a Nightshade. Hits the Rotom quite well. As a Trick comes out, was not expecting this, but I'm just going to Nightshade. I'm now Choice Scarf, but the Rotom is going to still outspeed me. But I'm perfectly fine giving up my Sableye for some Nightshade chip. Like, this is super annoying for him. He's actually going to give up his Rotom Wash for this. So yeah, like I said, these mons are kind of throwaway, so I am able to just like kind of stay in here. You know, die to Fiery Dance, it's all good, but my Urshifu Rapid is able to come in here, get some offensive turns. I Terra Dragon in front of it and go for Surging Strikes. My pads will protect me, not my pads, my Punching Glove will protect me from helmets here, but a red card gets used up. That's fine by me. Meowscarada comes in. So he actually lives knockoff thanks to the red card item being used up, but I U-turn into Terapagos, predicting this Strength Sap, and I'm able to actually get off a Toxic on the Sinistra, which is going to be a super big deal, right? So Machigotcha comes out, knocks out, he actually misses, but that's not going to end up mattering too much. This game, it was already a massively favored endgame for my Latios, as well as my Urshifu. Like, there isn't really a whole lot that can stop it as long as the Sinistra is toxic. Like, literally, I Calm Mind on this thing, you know what I mean? So, this is basically going to be wrapped. I end up Dragon Pulsing the Sinistra, not risking crits there on Shadow Ball. Fortress comes in, but I am able to just recover on this thing. It ends up being Lunge, which is super funny. Barely 2-hit KOs my Latios. I don't really want to stay in on this thing. I recover one more time just to get a little bit higher HP, gauge the rolls. 49, still not something I'm super comfortable staying in with, so I'm going to switch out into my Klefki. And this endgame, I can kind of just waffle around. There's no way for me to lose this game, really. I'm just going to T-Wave this, you know, potentially get some extra turns. Spikes go up, I don't really care, you know. Reflect up as a spin comes out, but it's a Boots guy and a Fortress. I don't care about my hazards being up. I'm just going to Dazzling Gleam here as a Volt Switch comes out, but T-Wave into Iron Moth is like immediately game over, so he's gonna switch out into Fortress, but the whole time I'm gaining leftovers. This is kind of checkmate. We can speed ahead. It's like very basic clicks. I always T-Wave into Moth, always dazzling them into Fortress or set up a Reflect, it's all good. So now T-Wave into Moth, he had to go for like a miss or something, but now I'm able to just Surging Strike and kill everything. And that's going to be the game. So GG versus 64 squares. And now we go into week 3 against Kyle. Now this guy, he's just off a DPL championship where he had a really great performance on Doublade versus Goliath. That was the team name. So I know he's no slouch, and he has TERA URSHIFU, which, if you are unaware, is a Pokemon that I have a very high opinion of. I've been glazing that thing for a very long time, and it's nice to see it actually getting some recognition recently. But this video is not about Zarude apart from right now, you know what I mean? That's the matchup we have. Now, how am I going to build around Zarude? Well, like I said, this team has tools for pretty much everything. I'm going to have Unaware Clodsire, which, with Toxic, Earthquake, I don't know if I'm Earthquake, I might be Body Press. It was between those things in testing and mocks. So I don't actually remember. But I have Toxic Clodsire, which is going to cover every Zarude that isn't like Poison or Steel, or I guess like Jungle Healing. But I really felt Synthesis was the way to go for Zarude in this matchup. Now the reason why is because all of my Pokemon do quite a bit of damage to it, right? Terapagos, you know, could influence a Terra Ghost. And unless that happens, you know, Starstorm is doing a lot of damage. You know, maybe it could be like bulky with Jungle Healing, but even then, I have answers for it. You know, my Moltres is going to end up being Scarf this game. As if you look at it, there's not a whole lot of great fire resists that want to come in multiple times, right? Now, Basculation is the exception, right? We ran into AV Basculation quite a bit in mocks, and by quite a bit, I mean like 1 or 2 times, but we ran into it as it's like the best available Terapagos check, so it also doubles as a Moltres check, which is nice, but the combination of Terapagos and Moltres is hard for it to deal with, especially if I get like a Spikes up, Rocks up, something like that. So that's something to consider. I have a few builds that I made for this team, and for the first 2 weeks I only had the one build that I was like editing in my showdown, but for the rest of this season, I actually have the multiple builds saved, so I'm going to go over them pretty briefly. So, I had a few options, right? Because I knew that Terra Fire Moltres was really good offensively, but also my Urshifu Rapid was good offensively. So, like, I had to see which one was I going to go with. What was my initial plan, right? So this is like the team that, like, I built initially to have like a Terra Urshifu plan, where like I'm definitely going to Terra the Urshifu. The Terra Fairy on Moltres is literally just like an emergency button. I don't plan on using it at all. So I did some mocks with this, with like Double Dance Terapagos with Dark Pulse, Latias with Weakness Policy, Calm Mind, Agility, Stored Power, just some like really crazy win conditions there, and then like Fairy Lock on this Klefki, which was like pretty cool to ensure something that goes down that I want to when it revenge kills my Klefki. This is Scarf Urshifu Rapid with Close Combat. Let's see. This was like kind of like to deter Zarude, right? Having a Scarfer that hits it very strong. It's pretty nice. Surging Strikes, always critting, goes through the defense boost, which is nice if it's not like a Water Resist Terra. But yeah, this wasn't the team that I ended up landing on, but I just thought I'd go through all the teams. This is Pazmiaskarada for the Zapdos. I felt this was pretty good. And this is another team that I made. This was kind of like all the wild sets that I wanted to bring that I wasn't sure if would actually work. This mock, you know, doesn't even have all the EVs, but like this Clodsire counter double toxic kind of thing, no attacks. And then like a Tailwind kind of thing with a Choice Banded Meowscarada. Like this is some wild stuff. And then this Latias was super weird. Mono Alluring Voice with Reflect type. What was this even for? Reflect type versus Bronzong. Reflect type into Zapdos, you can't get T-Waved or anything like that. So like Reflect type into Cinderace, you also like wall it in return, kind of. But we didn't end up actually going with this because it's like so weak. It's really hard to set up enough to actually threaten the other side. So this is the build that we actually landed on. So let's go over it real quick. This is, you know, once again, this Double Dance Terapagos, but this time with Spin over Rock Polish. I felt like the Spin was pretty valuable here. because I did end up being Scarf Moltres with Terra Fire. Now, this build I can really Terra either one, depending on what the situation calls for. Most mocks I was tearing the Urshifu in like the early to mid game to get a lot of progress, but some of them I found a Terra Fire end game with Scarf Flamethrower, and that was pretty hard for my opponents to deal with. This Clodsire is more so like the basic Clodsire, Rocks Recover, Toxic Earthquake, Physically Defensive Unaware. This kind of just checks Zarude. Unless it's Encore, it doesn't really beat this thing 1v1. Even if it's like Jungle Healing, Toxic and Jungle Healing have like the same PP, so if Earthquake is able to force like some recovery, then he's down 1 Jungle Healing, and then, you know, I'll be able to Toxic it eventually, you know what I mean? Urshifu, you know, standard Punching Glove. This one is actually Adamant Max Attack, which is not going to be too common in this whole tournament, but this is the set we landed on. The Max Attack is kind of important for this time because Surging Strikes into Zapdos, right? Physically Defensive Zapdos is a pretty reasonable Urshifu switch-in, but with Terra Electric and Punching Glove, I kind of turn that the other way, right? Meowscarada with Protective Pads, you know, just pretty standard into Zapdos. I was really smoking with Choice Band, but I didn't want to risk the static, as Protective Pads was also very good, and it's a little bit safer, you know what I mean? Now, Latias with Scarf, you know, so I have double Scarf here. The Healing Wish option into Urshifu was really, really valuable in mocks, so that's what I ended up going with in the end. The Trick Scarf is also quite useful, as well as just the Dual Stabs is good, because, you know, the resist is Bronzong, right? And I don't really respect Bronzong at all. I feel like I'm very much able to chip that thing down elsewhere, or just trick it, you know? It's not a big deal. Alright, what else do I need to go over here? Not much. I think we've gone over the team. But now let's look into the replay. Switch to the POV, of course. We need to be watching from my perspective. Now, this is the Zarude with a cape. Zarude Dada, which doesn't matter, but it looks cool. And you see the Basculegion, right? Some mocks they were benching Basculegion, but when it did come, it was always AV. So I pretty much knew what to expect here. My Moltres is not going to be as good, because I was figuring if there's no Basculegion, I'm probably going to end up tearing my Moltres at some point. But if there is that Basculegion, I more so pivot towards that Urshifu Terra option. So there is that to consider. Outside of that, though, what got benched? Enamorus and Carbink, it looks like, right? Yeah, so no Enamorus means my Dracos are a little bit freer from Latias, as well as like my Enamorus dual stabs are pretty good. But anyways, let's actually just get into the game. So here, Zarude leads off into my Urshifu Rapid. Now here I actually switch into Claude, as I do want to get up rocks and I want to scout the Terra. Knockoff comes out, only does 31%. I'm able to get up my rocks here, as he's just going to go Bronzong to trade rocks, pretty reasonable. But my Moltres is going to get in before rocks, so I'm in before I have to spin. Now Basculegion is going to come in, but this chip is actually really valuable. It doesn't seem like a lot, but rocks plus 15% is going to add up pretty fast, because Terrapagos is here, and then Wave Crash, you know, a little bit more chip on this thing. It's already at like half after hazards, so it just shows how fast you can chip something down. Now Urshifu is going to Surging Strikes into this Zapdos, does quite a bit of damage, but I'm thinking this is over half. He's not going to be able to roost this off. There's a okay chance that I'm faster, but if he is like faster than my Urshifu, you know, he could be. It depends on the EVs, right? I want to Terra and avoid like getting punished by like a Thunder Wave, a T-Bolt, a Hurricane, anything like that. I just want to Surging Strikes here. He goes for a Roost, you know, hoping for me to switch out or something like that, but I Surging Strikes, and now it's actually in range of Aqua Jet, I believe, so that's what I'm going to go for. This risks one turn of Helmet, but he, I think, revealed Boots there, right? So, no harm. Now Zarude comes in. This thing actually doesn't kill me from here, so I'm going to take this knockoff. I get rid of the Punching Glove, but this is fine. My Surging Strike is still going to do quite a lot of damage to this thing. And here it's kind of a 50-50, kind of not. I go for Aqua Jet for a little bit of chip. He could have synced up there. That would have been bad for me, but I felt like that was never going to happen. Like, you just saw your Zapdos try to do that exact play and got punished for it. And if you lose your Zarude to another Surging Strikes into Aqua Jet, you're just completely cooked. So I knew he was just going to knock me out there, which is why I went for Jet. Now here I knock off with my Masquerada as Bronzong is the switch into Masquerada question mark. I'm going to take this any time of the week, right? This chip is so valuable for my Latios, it's not even funny, right? The Zarude, which is the other Dragon Resist, is at 14%. And I don't think it's boots, right? It took hazards. So if this thing goes down, there's no Psychic Resist. The Basculegion can take 1, but that also is tasked with my taking on Terapagos. So I figure if I'm able to chip down this Bronzong, my Latios is looking really, really good in this endgame. So I'm not, of course, going to take the chip with knockoff on it. He predicts like a switch or something, Nightshades. But here I'm actually able to switch up moves into the Great Tusk. I basically want to avoid this just bulk up rapid spinning here. He misses Rock Slide. I was perfectly fine giving up my Masquerada, as you know, I come in with my Latios and go for a Psychic. As you can see, like, I don't even 2-hit KO this, so it's all the same thing anyways. Latios comes in, it's going to force a KO either way. Great Tusk is going to be the sack of choice. Now Basculegion comes in. What do I do here? I just Psychic again, because it's impossible for him to stop the double threat of Terapagos plus Moltres. So I just need to chip this thing, right? Now I Psychic it again, but looking at it, I'm like, Terapagos is a little bit harder to win with compared to Latios at this point. Latios only really fears like Sucker Punch Cinderace, and I really enjoy having something like multiple things faster than the Zarude if it's able to synth up. But I do Psychic again, never mind, I gave a whole speech for nothing. I must have like mixed it up with some mock sequences. I thought I was gonna save that, but it's all good because I have Scarf Moltres to outspeed Zarude anyways. So Terapagos comes in. I'm able to just Dark Pulse this, no big issue. I knew this thing was going to be Endeavor, so I really don't want to like try to set up on this thing. It's not going to end well. Like, it could have Endeavor, let's say. We don't know if it actually had Endeavor, but obviously a Jet makes sense to break my Terra Shell. But yeah, Cinderace comes in, I'm able to eat that with ease. Rapid Spin up, get rid of the rocks for my Moltres, and Terra Starstorm is going to put this in Flamethrower range, and we're going to see a Moltres sweep in the endgame. We see an SD, but +2 quick attack is not going to KO Moltres, and he doesn't know I'm Scarf at this point, so I'm going to just knock this out and then knock out the Zarude, no issue, and that's going to be the game. Honestly, I felt like I was able to get the early game sequences very well in this match. I didn't have like a raw win con into like AV Basculegion because my double setup Terapagos was not able to do much against it at all, but I was able to play around my Scarfer, which is my Moltres, that kind of win con, which of course there's no great fire resist out of these, so if Cinderace, you know, goes down, then all of a sudden there's no fire resist. You know, if Basculegion is traded for Terapagos, which you saw, and Latios, there's a lot of pressure on his special wall here. So eventually something's going to break through, and in this game it was the Moltres. Right, next game we are up against Habita with this like really weird team. Obviously it looks cool, the colors are nice, you know, a little purple, a little orange, you know, but there's a big problem with this team, and that problem is called Urshifu Rapid. Now if you look at it closely, right, the only switch into this thing is Leafeon. Everything else is getting 2-hit KO'd by my stab moves. And Leafeon actually gets Swords Danced on by Urshifu Rapid. So this is not great for him. Spoiler. So a lot of mocks I was literally just sweeping with Urshifu Rapid constantly. So let's see. I have this like initial build. This is not the final build, but I just want to go over it real quick. So Choice Specs Meowscarada I thought was pretty cool. Pollen Puff, there's not a great resist to Pollen Puff in this matchup, which is hilarious, right? But if you look at the bug resists, it's like Slitherwing and non-Terra Torn. So like, what are we cooking here? How are you like that weak to bug? Now, being Specs Pollen Puff is actually a 2-hit KO on Overquill if it's just physically defensive, as well as Roaring Moon, I believe, is dead after 1 hazard. So there is that to go off of, as well as it hits Donphan very hard. Rotom Wash can't really 1v1 that. So it's a nice move to click, as well as like, what else? Like Shadow Ball. There's no Shadow Ball resist outside of Roaring Moon, right? So like, I guess Overquill, but if Overquill's alive, then I'm clicking one of these top 2 buttons. Power Gem is there to do quite a bit to Torn, as well as it 2-hit KOs Slitherwing and allows me to resist First Impression So like a whole lot of, I don't know if it actually 2-hit KOs Slitherwing. It might do like 40%, but a lot of damage. This was actually super fun in mocks. But yeah. Choice Scarf for Urshifu. I wasn't really sure what Urshifu I wanted to go with here. I had options of Choice Scarf or Punching Glove, you know, kind of thing. I think I ended up being a Punching Glove, yeah. But Scarf was really great here as well. Like, there's no great fighting resist if the Torn goes down or if it tears out of the fighting resist. So a lot of mocks, I was just sweeping with CC, you know what I mean? And there wasn't a whole lot they could do about it. Then people started bringing like TERA Ghost on the Torn, which really like put a stop to things. And those matchups were quite a bit harder for that team to deal with, because obviously Ghost is good against Pollen Puff. It's also good against Terapagos, and it's good against Urshifu. Like, that's a whole lot of things to be good against. So I didn't really want to make all of my team weak to the same thing, you know what I mean? So what I actually ended up landing on was this team with Choice Banded Meowscarada. Now, your first instinct versus this team is it probably is going to be Scarf Meowscarada to revenge Roaring Moon, right? Because a normal Meowscarada, like non-Scarf, is just going to get walled by Overquill anyways, so what's even the point? But the point is, there's no great Fairy resist. This team doesn't have resist to anything. So Meowscarada with Play Rough is actually really, really strong. So if I'm able to get like a Hazard Up or two into the Overquill, it's not going to enjoy taking those Play Roughs, you know what I mean? It's going to die very quickly. And I do have really good Overquill switch-ins. It's not like it's doing a lot of damage back. So I felt like that was like a really positive trade. Just click Play Rough and everything will work out. If I turn into a Fairy type, it's also very hard for him to revenge me outside of Iron Crown. So there is that going for it as well. So I found a lot of success in mocks with Choice Banded Meowscarada. And then let's see, the Terapagos. This is going to be just like a bulky set with Rocks, Spin, Dark Pulse. Dark Pulse is just for the TERA Ghost Torn basically and the Iron Crown. Now unfortunately I was not able to run Flare Blitz on my Terapagos, even though I really wanted to, because AV Iron Crown was very popular in mocks and Flare Blitz Terapagos is cool, you know what I mean? But Dark Pulse was just a little bit more reliable. Just basically for that TERA Ghost Torn that was so annoying in mocks. But anyways, that's the Terapagos set, just leftovers. Leftovers was really valuable this time with mocks, so I decided to keep it. And then Urshifu Rapid Strike, right? This is another very bulky set. Not too fast, but a little bit of speed. And then Adamant with some attack investment with Punching Glove. Now this Pokemon really threatens to sweep the entire game very easily, right? With Terra Electric, I don't really fear the Torn. It's actually my main Torn check in this whole team. So there is that. Sword Stance, you know, Drain Punch, Surging Strikes. This is really good. The thing about Rotom Wash is that after Rocks, it'll die to +2 CC. So I did kind of feel the need to tech double fighting coverage on this thing, which means I don't really have coverage for like Leafeon with Ice Punch, but I didn't feel a need to have that, as Ice Punch is just weaker than CC anyways. So there's that, you know what I mean? Alternatively, I could have been Sub, that would have been useful, but SD3 attacks was really good. Then Latios is just going to be Screens Healing Wish to support my Urshifu. If I'm able to get Urshifu behind screens, I found in mocks a lot of time the game just ended there. Nothing that they could do, you know what I mean? So getting that option there. Draco is a good move, right? Into his team, there's no Draco immunity. It's only Iron Crown, which if I'm able to chip with Dracos, you know, maybe a Spike Up, then all of a sudden my Terapagos is looking pretty good, right? Because there's no normal resist outside of Iron Crown. Like, Iron Crown has to be resist for everything. It's just like, this team looks cool, but it doesn't work, you know what I mean? Anyways, Latios is there. And then Klefki, I believe, is just Spikes, T-Wave kind of thing. Another Reflect user, just because Roaring Moon is scary, basically. If I'm able to Reflect in front of that thing, even if it like 2-hit KOs me with Knockoff into 2 EQs, you know, because Reflect takes up a turn, so it's essentially a 2-hit KO on me anyways, then I'll have a Reflect up and I can get my Urshifu in, and then I SD literally on Roaring Moon, and it's all good. And then Moltres is just going to be specially defensive. with Roar. This is basically to cover for like setup Iron Crowns, which was like the main worry I had in the end game. Basically, if Iron Crown didn't win, nothing was going to win versus me. So I decided to be like extra careful into that with Roar, specially defensive Moltres. Also doubles as like a Terra Fairy option into Roaring Moon if that ever does get out of hand. I actually took off Terra Fairy, I'm Terra Dark now. Yeah, this was for I like stored power, weakness policy kind of things. If I accidentally proc it, I always have like this one out if I really need it, but of course I'm planning on tearing my Urshifu Rapid here. Anyways, I believe that's everything. No, that's the wrong matchup. Yeah, so now we can get into the game. Alright, so not quite the 6 I expected actually. I expected the Slitherwing to be benched. What else got benched? It was the Dawn Fan. It was the Dawn Fan that got benched, right. This was a big deal, because that means there's no removal on this team. And with 4 Mons weak to spikes, I was like, yippee, my spikes are gonna go crazy, right? As well as I have rocks on Terapagos. Like, can you ask for a more reliable rocker than that? Not really. If I really want rocks up, I will get them up. Anyways, we see the Tornadus is actually Terra Flying, which does also make sense, make it a little bit stronger, still resist the CC from Urshifu, so I get that. Terapagos is going to lead into Slitherwing though. Do I just get rocks up here? I think I do, right? As Rotom comes in, yeah, rocks go up, and here I'm just going to Terra Starstorm. A little bit chip on Rotom goes a long way here, as I get T-Waved, but this is fine by me. This is a trade I was taking quite often in mocks, but an important thing to note is that Rotom was faster than my Terapagos. And if you look at my prep here real quick, my Terapagos and my Urshifu actually hit a very similar speed stat. So I knew that Rotom might be outspeeding my Urshifu Rapid. It might have some speed EVs, which never came up in mocks ever. So kind of unexpected prep by Haba is going to make it a little bit harder to deal with this Rotom, especially with Light Screen, right? I'm not able to get the same chip that I would like. But here, Pain Split, I'm perfectly fine trading my Terapagos to ensure the Rotom is low. I don't really need my Terapagos for anything in particular this game, which is why I'm leading rocks with it. Now Iron Crown comes in on another Terra Starstorm. It does 13, but behind Light Screen that reveals it's actually Offensive Crown. So I go into my Moltres thinking maybe a setup is coming behind screens, but a Psychic comes out, it does half. Now this is like a high roll, but I don't want to risk it. It's actually Specs Iron Crown from that damage. So my Latios comes in, I reveal max HP on this thing, but I'm going to go for a Draco because I know he's not going to stay in with Psychic. As a Roaring Moon comes out, freebie. So that was really awesome. That means my Klefki is a little bit less important, right? Because the main thing it's here to check is now dead. Now with this in mind, Torn is here. Torn is Terra Flying. I need something to switch into this. I go to my Klefki, and Terra Blast comes out, does 29%. Now, silly me, I figured that if you take rocks and you're Terra Flying, you might be choiced. I clicked this button a little bit too fast. I go for a T-Wave, but it is Lumberry, and Heat Wave actually knocks me out. This is a max roll. Like, literally max roll is 77, and so I died. So I actually don't get any spikes, which is super annoying. This is like the one turn where if I had it back, I would always spike. Because if it's Scarf Torn or anything like that, I'm really not too worried about it. I have Terra Electric or Shifu, right? So I don't need to T-Wave it necessarily, as my main win condition beats it 1v1. So like, who cares? A spike would go so far though. Especially into like a Meowscarada endgame. That spike would have been massive. Now, it was like a mid-roll into a absolute max roll. So can't really complain about rolls too hard, but it would have been nice, you know what I mean? Yeah, rolls are not hacks. Urshifu comes in though. This is like my only option here. Overquill is going to be the switch in. I believe I'm just going to attack here. No, I SD. I'm so good. Now, +1 Surging Strikes is going to do a lot to this Overquill. Now, this is really important chip for my Meowscarada. He actually just blows up, which is hilarious. I'm in range of Psychic here, so I go into Terapagos. It's pretty useless. He actually Tachyon Cutters, which would not have knocked me out, and if I Drain Punched here, I'm pretty sure I just win the game on the spot, but that's a risk that I'm not willing to take, and he correctly reads that. As Urshifu is so good, I'm able to Healing Wish it back up later. He probably predicted the Latios to want to come in, but here Latios does come in. I go for the Light Screen, And here a reflect here. This was maybe a little bit greedy on the reflect. I probably could have just healing wished immediately. Went into Urshifu, and that ensures the SD on the Iron Crown. But here the Torn comes in. Now I'm still going to go Urshifu, but it actually reveals Taunt on my SD. So this is actually really messing with my game plan here. My screen turns are running out super fast, and here he makes a nice pivot into Rotom Wash on my Surging Strikes. And we knew this was a possibility. The Rotom's actually going to be faster than my Urshifu, which super sucks, because Pain Split is going to do a lot of damage and restore the Rotom out of range. Now Taunt ends. I should have just SD'd immediately here. This was a misplay by me. I figured Drain Punch would be enough here, but my screen turns are running out really fast. And now the light screen's over, and my opponent gets a light screen up. So my Urshifu basically ends up back where it was at 53%, and the Iron Crown is back in, and I can't risk this at this point because, you know, Torn is like really scary. So this is actually a massive 50-50. So if he Psychics into Stay In or Moltres, he's in a very good position. But if he Tachyons into Meowscarada, he's in a great position as well. As well as like Moltres Switch doesn't really cover anything. So Moltres Switch is not a real consideration. It's a Psychic and I Stay In, or you Tachyon as I switch to Meowscarada. Those are the two main options for him. Now if he makes the wrong play, he will lose the game on the spot, is the thing. Because if I go Meowscarada, you'll see what happens later. But if he Psychics into Urshifu, then Urshifu's dead. That's great. I get a Meowscarada turn. But he has the Slitherwing. The Torn is there. The Torn is really, really threatening at this point. Especially with Lumberry, I can't knock it. Play Rough is like a roll. Depends on investment, so it's like pretty tough. So if he gets this Urshifu, that's pretty bad for me. I kind of need this thing for the Torn. But if he Tachyons, predicting a switch out, and I Stay In, I'm able to Drain Punch, knock this thing out, and then my Urshifu is unkillable. So it's like a really, really high impact turn here, and I get it right. I go Meowscarada on the Psychic. I figure he's not going to risk the Urshifu just winning the game on the spot, but of course it's a 50-50. There's only so much analysis you can do. But I figured if I go Meowscarada on a Tachyon Cutter, I am able to go Moltres and Roost up, and it is somewhat possible that Moltres is able to 1v1 the rest of the team. Slitherwing does get Wild Charge, but it could be slower than me and just die to Flamethrower or get 2-hit KO'd. The light screen is not going to last forever. It was set up by a Rotom Wash that doesn't have Light Clay. So I figured if I'm able to Roost up with my Moltres, then it could potentially win the game even if this goes wrong. And then I'd still have my Urshifu to check the Torn in the back, so maybe I had an out even if I got this wrong, but I got it right. And now I'm going to make an aggressive play. So I figure he's not going to Stay in Psychic because Knockoff is like really free here. Free in quotation marks. Slitherwing does exist, which is what he goes to. I'm going to Play Rough this on the switch, make the prediction as I miss. Now this is actually not that big of a deal. It actually OHKOs after rocks. So he could just Stay in and sack this, maybe even get off some chip with First Impression. Not going to end up mattering really. But here he actually goes Iron Crown, as I don't reveal Banded at any other point. He thinks it's going to be Scarf for Roaring Moon. But Iron Crown is going to switch and take 32%, and ladies and gentlemen, that's a 2-hit KO. And my Meowscarada is never going to switch out of this game. Torn, I'm actually going to end up getting the roll, or he's just like no HP. Does 76, knocks it out after rocks, and Slitherwing of course is not going to be able to take this. And that's going to be the game. So a really exciting endgame for me. I remember my heart was racing when I was going Meowscarada on that Psychic. That was very epic. But yeah, we're able to clean up with Choice Banded Meowscarada. Yeah, a little bit of misplays in this game, honestly. This should have been not as close. All of my mocks were complete wheelchairs. This was the closest it ever got. And that's because of like 2 misplays that I made in the mid game. So, my fault. But anyways, this next matchup is up against Rai. Now this matchup was really, really, really great for me. And the reason why is, of course, Urshifu Rapid. Where are the fighting resists? It's literally only Vikavolt or a Terra type. Now, a lot of times you're going to see Punching Glove, Punching Glove, Punching Glove, Punching Glove. But here, it's going to be Choice Scarf. Now, Choice Scarf Urshifu Rapid is going to outpace like a +1 Tusk, as well as, you know, if you look at the opposing speed tiers, there's 6 Pokemon that outspeed my Urshifu Rapid. If I'm not Scarf, it's just so sad, right? Everything's gonna be faster, everything's gonna chip me, it's gonna be like a 1-for-1 at best kind of deal. But with Scarf and no fighting resist to really speak of, I'm able to just CC, outspeed a lot of these guys, and it's just a great Pokemon. You know what I mean? I'm able to 2-hit KO basically the whole roster with CC, if not OHKO it, and so it's just a great Scarfer. Now I want to go over one like initial build that I had, which is actually AV Urshifu Rapid. Now this set was also quite good with Tera Fairy. I kind of check everything, it's like an everything check, as well as it does quite good damage. This is like EV to take a Specs Steam Eruption in the Sun from Proto Special Attack or something like that. It's like very specially defensive with Assault Vest. So having something to trade into that was useful, as Clodsire literally cannot switch into Walking Wake if they want to kill the Clodsire, you know what I mean? Like Terra Dragon Draco, it literally kills the Spadef Clodsire. It's like super messed up. So having the Tera Fairy AV option was useful in mocks, of course, as well as Tera Fairy on the Moltres, able to have something to switch into Draco Meteor was nice, but at the end of the day, this was not the build I ended up going with. Scarf Meowscarada to revenge kill a bunch of stuff, of course, and then Scarf Latias also revenge kills a bunch of stuff. So the thing about this matchup is, it's really great offensively for me, but I don't have the defensive tools to handle everything on his team. That's something really great about Sun. It's just so overwhelming. You can see in this initial build, I have double Scarf, and you know, like basically 3 defensive Mons, and then like 2 Scarfs, and then Serapagos. Like a lot of like 1-for-1 trading kind of thing. And to be honest, this build was also winning a bunch of mocks. Like T-Spikes into him is just so devastating. If you look at it, there's no removal outside of Tusk, right? And I can block that with Sableye potentially. And T-Spikes hits like pretty much everything on this roster. Like it hits 6 Pokemon, which is so funny. So either it's going to be Terra Poison on something, or it's going to be some Boots, or he's just going to try to spin with Tusk and yeah, go from there. So this first team doesn't have a spin block with Sableye, but the final build does, I'm pretty sure. But this was more so like the build where I was like, if I bring some standard-ish sets, you know, how's this gonna go? Like, I have my bulky, you know, checks to stuff, some more bulk, how's it gonna go? And I was winning mocks, but it wasn't quite as comfortable as I wanted. So then I tried this version. Now, I know it's a little bit off the screen, but the title of this in my showdown paste is, I say DPL, I meant DCL, same kind of thing. DCL versus Riot, triple Scarf offense dumbass. That's what I called it in my builder. So this is basically just offense, right? I have triple Scarf to deal with his opposing offense. Like I said, the Urshifu Rapid with no fighting resist is very nice. Latias crucially outspeeds Walking Wake and knocks it out. And then Meowscarada outspeeds Roaring Moon and stuff like that. So just a super fast trio there. 3 Scarfs. You got your Healing Wish, you know, it's a lot of stuff. And then I have a physically defensive Moltres, a physically defensive Clodsire, and a physically defensive Sableye. So why is this offense, right? Well, Moltres is kind of here just to like reposition, right? I take hits. I could Tera Fairy if I need to into the Roaring Moon, and just this kind of just deals with that thing defensively. I don't need to sack him on every time it comes in, you know what I mean? But Flamethrower, Roar, Roost, U-Turn. Roar is nice to rack up hazard chip, as if you look at my Clodsire, this is literally triple hazard with max defense Rocky Helmet. So my way of making progress with Clodsire is getting hazards up, and then just like, it's kind of like a sack that's useful, you know what I mean? If Roaring Moon gets a free turn, I'm able to switch in, you know, get some Rocky Helmet damage on it. This is like my lead to get up T-Spikes, and then after that, it's like my first sack. So there's that. Another Rocky Helmet user, Sableye. So with double Rocky Helmet plus Moltres, I'm not really fearing Hisuian Lilligant as much. So that's nice, as well as Latias will outspeed it outside of Sun with Chlorophyll. So there is that. Sableye though, with Rain Dance, this was a really cool tech. Get rid of the sun, and then it also gets rid of like the photosynthesis attack, which means my Sableye is able to wall the Great Tusk a little bit easier. Will-O-Wisp is there to, you know, obviously neuter the Tusk, and then Knockoff is like my best single move option here. But yeah, let's look into the actual game. So this is actually super funny. Vikavolt is here, and the only person who mocked me with Vikavolt was Mountay. And that's his boy. Mountay and Vikavolt go way back. But he was right, it actually did end up coming. So webs are going to be an issue for me. I don't really have removal here, as the Terapagos is benched, which is super funny by the way. But without Terapagos, I knew webs was going to be an issue, but I do at least have one Scarfer off the ground, which is Latios. And the rest of them kind of function as normal without Scarf, so it's all good. I did end up creeping my mouse guard a few points extra, so that I account for like the -1 plus Scarf, you know, thing, rounding thing, where it sometimes ends up being 1 point slower. I didn't want to speed tie Roaring Moon, so I'm like a little bit faster. Anyways, let's look into the game. The Terra types here is a Terra Fire on Walking Wake, and the Hisuian Lilligant is benched. Now, the only thing that was really causing me issues in mocks was the Hisuian Lilligant, so it's nice to see that thing benched, you know what I mean? But the Ogerpon Hearthflame ended up being a little bit trickier to deal with than I initially thought. So Clodsire comes in, dodges Hypnosis in exchange for the T-Spikes, so this is what happens when you're in Hypnosis, sometimes you're going to miss. It's a good tool, like I respect Rai bringing Hypnosis, like it is the best way to prevent T-Spikes at lead, because I actually live a Headlong Rush from full. You know, there's not a whole lot he could do to prevent these T-Spikes going up, but I'm able to get 2 hazards up with the Hypnosis, and I'm gonna sleep sack my Clodsire. Uppies. I'm so funny. But now I'm just gonna go Moltres. It walls this thing. As Baton Pass comes out, Walking Wake comes in, takes hazards. Now he's going to collect his KO here, basically. I went in knowing that I don't have a switch into Walking Wake. He's going to Weather Ball though, with Fire. So I actually don't need to sack a Pokemon. I can go Latios and live this pretty comfortably. With Poison, he's actually in range of my attacks, so I can just go for a free Draco Meteor. It's a KO on anything. There's no Draco Resist, so Scarf Latios to the rescue. Now Great Tusk is going to come in, but I have Sableye specifically for this to prevent the spin. It is Lumberry with Proto Attack, which is like probably one of the worst case scenarios with Play Rough, right? So he knows the Sableye comes in, I know the Sableye is coming in, he's going to hit that on the switch, but here I'm able to just Will-O-Wisp this thing, and my Sableye is going to go down for it, but it actually doesn't. I dodged the Play Rough. Now, honestly, he didn't need to Play Rough here. Could have just Headlonged. It would have been much safer, but, you know, that's the risk you take when you click the inaccurate move, I guess. Like, he had the option there. Like, that's on him. Sableye is going to be able to recover up now, which is pretty important. I knock off the Occa Berry here as webs go up. I knew the webs was going up, so yeah, but it's actually really hard for my team to switch into Vikavolt, funny enough. Like, the dual stabs kind of hits everything. So I'm just going to sack my Clodsire, but Baton Pass comes out, he gets some Sun Up. But here, what am I going to do? I don't sack a Pokemon, right? I want to keep my sacks. I go Moltres. As a Healing Wish comes out into Great Tusk. Now this is where keeping the Sableye is important, right? Because now I do actually have the spin block. He actually goes for spin, banging on a choke or something. I kind of get it, he's kind of behind. But here I'm going to recover, just get as much Rocky Helmet chip as possible. I would have died if I didn't recover, so I'm going to get another recover off. And now Play Rough is going to happen. It's going to knock me out, but at this point, Poison and Helmet has racked up. This thing is not going to get a spin opportunity as Urshifu Rapid Strike comes in, and I actually outspeed with Terra Fighting Drain Punch. Now the reason I went for a Draining Punch with Terra Fighting, there's a few reasons, right? If I go into Latios, right, that's one option to revenge this. I can't really go for Psychic very comfortably because, you know, the Roaring Moon is like the one way. It's like the one win condition left, so I don't want to lock into Psychic, give it a free DD, especially because my Scarfer that's supposed to outspeed it, you know, Scrota, is slowed by Sticky Webs. So I really don't want that thing setting up, and if I Draco, then I'm -2, and that's not great either, right? Like, you can DD on a -2 Draco if you really want to, I guess, or Ogerpon could come in and claim something. So Urshifu seemed like the best opportunity to like really end the game now, because Terra fighting Drain Punch actually knocks out Ogerpon. It after the T-Spike damage at least. Knocks out the Roaring Moon, prevents setup, and the Vikavolt, if it comes in, it has to take rocks, and if it's max defense, you know, I have the Clodsire sack, it's not going to, you know, be a big issue. Maybe what could have gone wrong is Clodsire in on a Baton Pass, and then you get a DD, so either way, maybe a DD was getting given up, but in this sequence, I do at least get more poison damage on it, because it has to come in on a Baton Pass, as well as the Vikavolt takes rocks. So, like, this sequence is good for me no matter what. I actually live a Ivy Cudgel in the sun thanks to my bulk, but Ivy Cudgel crits me. Totally mattered. It would have died to Drain Punch, but it's the world we live in. Here I'm going to go for Meowscarada and U-turn, just get a little bit chip on this thing. The T-Spike is doing its work. But here, he gets a Sun Boosted Synthesis, and I'm like, uh-oh, that's not good, because Clodsire is a sack, you know, not too cool. It's like a waste of a sack, you know what I mean? So now my Latias is going to come in. I do end up locking in a Psychic here, even though I don't want to into Roaring Moon. I can't really Draco into this thing because it's just going to synth it off, but Psychic is doing too much. At some point, you know, this thing is going to end up low, right? Because rocks are up, T-Spike. It's going to be hard for him to come in at a later point. Roaring Moon does come in on the Psychic, but here I do have my Moltres available. However, my Terra did get expended, so I don't have Terra Fairy Moltres. I just have regular Moltres. Now this Scale Shot is going to do a lot of damage, reveals probably to be loaded dice. 4 hits though, and I'm going to be able to roar this thing out, reset it, which is really useful. Vikavolt comes in, that's a freebie with Flamethrower, but now Roaring Moon is going to come out once again, and a Scale Shot I can't really prevent. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 hits, so my Moltres does go down. That's unlucky, and it does get the +1 from Scale Shot, so my Latios is not faster. This is pretty dangerous, right? The good news is Meowscarada is able to live 1 Scale Shot from this thing, assuming no crits. I'm pretty confident in this thing not having the Roost here, so I'm going to go for a Sucker Punch here. I did tech on Sucker Punch last second. Like, the last move was never getting clicked in Mox, so I was like, may as well be Sucker Punch, you know? You never know what's going to happen with like +2 Roaring Moon. If it is +2, it's probably going to be low, you know what I mean? So I actually go for the Sucker Punch. It's -1 defense. This would put it in poison range. But I crit, and so we don't even get to see that. Honestly, I might have preferred not to crit and just die there, because at -1, he would have been put in poison range, I'm pretty sure. And then my Latias would have been a free entry point into this Ogerpon at 34. I don't really need to risk anything there. But here, it's really not the end of the world. I can just go Latias. This thing can't kill me in 1 hit because Latias natural typing, it would have to knock off there, which is an insane play to make because my Meowscarada would win anyways. So basically has to synth there. Psychic keeps it low, and then Meowscarada is able to finish it off with a U-turn. And that's going to be the game. So a little bit hacksy there with the Hypnosis misses and the Play Rough miss, but we ended up winning the game. And that's going to be it. Alright, so now we play Lax here. Now Lax is a really, really great player. From Smogon, has been doing quite well in draft recently. I believe he played in the DGBA or something like that, and he did a really nice performance there. He's been good in these team tours as well, so it's going to be a tough opponent. It's a Meowscarada mirror. Let's see, so Urshifu Rapid, right? Looks really stellar here. It's my main way of breaking through Galar Slowking, my main punish of Gliscor. It's also a nice Thunderous check because I'm going to be Terra Electric in this game. Now Terra Electric is like always really good on Urshifu Rapid, I found. There's not a whole lot of matchups where you don't want to be Terra Electric. Here especially, a Blastoise is a potential switch-in, so being able to more threaten that thing is nice. In this game, let's see, I had like 3 different builds, I think. This was one of the builds. This is like a Spikes Meowscarada with actually Leftovers Taunt, which is like pretty weird when you first look at it, but I promise it makes sense. And this is like offensive SD Urshifu, which is of course very, very strong. This is faster than Gliscor and it has Aqua Jet, so it's really hard for him to deal with this thing defensively. Terapagos with Power Herb Meteor Beam. This is something I wanted to test out. Steel Moltres. with Roar, just like a defensive piece. Clodsire, this one is pretty funny. It's Amnesia counter. This was not working out in Mox. I very quickly pivoted away from this, but this is one of the initial builds. Sableye with a Spadef, Encore, Foul Play, you know, Taunt, just general disruption, you know what I mean? There's also a spin block for the Blastoise. If it Shell Smashes, I can obviously Encore that. No big deal. But yeah, this kind of team, it was like alright, but as you can see, a lot of the sets are a little bit weird, not super standard, and they're not standard for a reason. Let's look at a second build that I wanted to try. This one is like quite a bit more wild, right? You see the Tailwind Lagging Tail Latios. The idea behind this is the water resists are not that great. So if I Tailwind with Latios and then I get a slow Baton Pass with Lagging Tail, then my Urshifu Rapid, Terra Water, Choice Band, Surging Strike, it's a 2-hit KO on basically the whole roster. Even Blastoise is getting 2-hit KO'd by this thing. However, I ran into Rocky Helmet Blastoise and Mox, and then I was like, well, that kind of ruins my whole vibe. And yeah, but this is like double Choice Band with a Tailwind, which did not end up working as well in the Mox as it did in my head. Pretty quickly pivoted away from this, but you can see like I'm having these weird ideas, but I'm testing them. I'm seeing they're maybe not the greatest, and then I end up landing on this final build. So Scarf Meowscarada, pretty standard. Revenge kills everything. Now this is a Terra Electric Urshifu Rapid with Substitute. Now Substitute was a really important development in Mox. I'm still faster than Gliscor here. Actually, funny enough, I speed tie Gliscor, and this was important for Calcs for a few reasons. One, I don't expect Gliscor to be max speed. I expect it to, you know, creep something, probably my Terapagos. But if it is max speed, then so be it. I'll speed tie it no matter what. What this allows me to do is get this very precise EV spread. Now, 44 Spadef is very important for my substitute. It allows me to sub on Blastoise, which is really important with how this set functions. And then my attack is like, it needs to be this high to get a certain knockout, which is Gliscor, right? So Gliscor Surging Strikes, if you do 4 less EVs, you actually lose a damage roll per Surging Strike, so it adds up 3 times. So anything lower than this, I actually don't knock out Gliscor, which is super important, right? Considering I'm Terra Electric, and this is my main Gliscor breaker, I do want to KO Gliscor, you know what I mean? So the attack is super important, the Spadef is super important, and the speed, you know, I'll speed tie Gliscor if I need to, you know what I mean? Terapagos here is just like utility, just 2 attacks, spin, rocks. I felt like this was pretty important to have on the team, so sometimes you would maybe want a different Terapagos, but this is the kind of thing that sometimes the team needs. Latios here is going to be Psych Up with 2 attacks, Healing Wish. I found that Calm Mind Slowking Galar was really obnoxious. The only thing that really stopped it was Clodsire, but if they bring Psychic Noise, then Clodsire doesn't stop it anymore. It only really stops like Psyshock, really. Because I'm Curse, Physically Defensive Clodsire. We'll get to that in a second, but Psych Up on Latias does allow me to beat Calm Mind Slowking 1v1, which, you know, the team was pretty weak to. So I felt like giving up 1 slot on Latias was worth it, just to like have something for that thing. So it was pretty dangerous. Now Clodsire, this is going to be one of my win conditions, right? And this thing was actually sweeping a ton of mocks. It was actually really impressive. So the thing is, with max defense and curse, you literally set up on Gliscor. Gliscor cannot do anything to Clodsire outside of taunt, which we didn't feel like taunt would be a move slot that it fits on this team, or versus this team, right? Because you need Earthquake. We know it's going to be Spikes if it comes, and then Protect, of course, and then you probably want Toxic, right? Because otherwise you're walled by Moltres or like Knockoff or something like that. Just some utility move on Gliscor that isn't Taunt, because yeah, what are you going to do? Taunt Moltres and then do nothing to it? Like I don't think so. If you're Taunt, you're going to be Toxic, and then there's no Spikes. Like at that point, what's the point? All right, so yeah, and then Klefki is just Physically Defensive Rocky Helmet. I'm actually Magnet Rise with Imprison. This is designed so that the Gliscor cannot spike versus me, as Imprison spikes, you know, and then Magnet Rise the next turn means I actually force out Gliscor, not the other way around, which is pretty important if I want to get spikes up. Then Dazzling Gleam is just, you know, the best solo attack option. So I was actually pretty happy with this team. Mocks are going pretty well. Let's get into the actual game. Alright, so first thing I noticed, there's no Gliscor, which is actually super annoying because a lot of my prep is built around Gliscor. So good call on his part, but it really renders my Klefki with like 2 useless move slots here, which totally sucks. And anyways, the Ceruledge is pretty scary. The Thundurus is like the #1 threat versus my team. I figured he would Terra the Thundurus, as that's what most of the mocks were doing. Just to break through the Clodsire a little bit easier, you know, stuff like that. Anyways, let's look at the Terra types here. His Terras are Terra Flying on the Thundurus and Terra Grass on the Ceruledge, which makes sense. Grass Ceruledge is there to like cover a Surging Strikes from Urshifu, so it makes a lot of sense. And then Thundurus being flying, you know, you can kind of lock into Terra Blast here. It kind of covers Latias and Clodsire in one slot, kind of. So there's that. But yeah, Meowscarada leads into Urshifu Rapid. I just want to get the ball rolling here. I actually Terra immediately turn 1. Maybe I could have gone Klefki here. Maybe that was a little bit better. But I go for a Surging Strike. I figured a U-turn was coming, or a hard switch out, or maybe spikes. Lead Meowscarada, sometimes they're going to be spikes. So if it is spikes Protean, then it turns into ground type, able to Surging Strike that. And if it is lead Sash, then like a Drain Punch isn't going to be better anyways. It's going to live 1 no matter what. So break the Sash, potentially. If it spikes Protean, then I'll knock it out. So it kind of covers that. I was not expecting Trick lead, although maybe in hindsight it's a little bit easier to say you should have expected that because there is a Klefki, but no one brought it in mocks, so team's fault, you know what I mean? But here I am just going to go Klefki. I don't see the use in staying in when I'm locked into Surging Strikes, and he could easily go to a Helmet Blastoise here. As Blastoise does come in, I am going to take this as a Latias entry point as Yawn comes out. So it's a bulky Blastoise, it seems. Klefki going to come in on flip turn. I just chip this thing a little bit with the Rocky Helmet. That's what it's there for. Thundurus comes in, but here I'm just going to spike up as a Psychic comes out, protecting the Clodsire. And I'm like, okay, Latias is going to come in. With Terra Flying, you might expect this thing to be choiced. You know, choice Terra Blast is like one thing it could be, maybe Scarf. So I go into my Latias, get a special defense drop, but that's not going to end up mattering. Psyshock comes out for 50%. He reveals not choiced with Volt Switch here. But he takes 50% on the Thundurus, which is really good chip for me. I'm happy with that exchange. Urshifu comes in on Tinkaton. This is where I would love to have a sub, but unfortunately I'm Scarf now. So I'd go for Drain Punch. I think the Blastoise might come in, so that's why I went for that. But Slowking comes in, able to Chilly Reception out. Of course I'm forced out. Ceruledge comes in. Latias is going to get forced out as well. Clodsire is max defense. Is going to be able to take 2 from this thing, but it's not going to take 2 very comfortably, you know what I mean? 47 is a lot of damage. He can just stay in, fish for crit here, burn some recover PP, and this is like super annoying. Eventually I'm going to get to a point where I can curse up and then it's like fine, but here Thundurus comes in. I'm just going to go Latias again, as Psychic is pretty obvious, and now I do force this thing out with the threat of Psyshock, but he does have a Slowking to pivot in, so it's going to take some chip. I'm fine with this, honestly. I'm just going to Psyshock again. I need the Slowking low, but Citrus Berry and Sludge Bomb here. So no poison, but Citrus kind of denies me the value from that turn. And here, I'm just going to go Klefki, as I don't want my Latias going down. I know he's trying to trade HP to open up the Thundurus, and I don't want that to happen. Here I get up a second Spike, and now Clodsire. I'm going to go Clodsire this time, but he's Psychics again. He's relentless. I get the play. In hindsight, obviously, Latias comes in on Psychic. You're not, like, super pressured by Latias. Like, sure, Spikes plus Psyshock is annoying to switch into, but you can do it. There's a Tinkaton, there's a Slowking. You can get around that. Whereas if Clodsire comes in, it's a little bit more tricky to switch into. So, yep. what I was trying to do is go Clodsire on like a Volt Switch or something like that, and then pivot out, but he catches me there, and now my Clodsire is weak. That's not good. I go Urshifu as this turn was actually insane by him. So he Psychics into my Clodsire, and then I'm like, I want to save this thing, of course. So he Volt Switches out on Urshifu. So that was a great play by him, honestly. Just props where it's due. Slowking comes in. I don't have a great Slowking switch in at this point, so Surging Strikes for damage is going to be my option. I should live one from this thing, but Chilly Reception comes out into Blastoise. Now here, I'm just going to go into Klefki, I believe, right? No, I go into Clodsire. Clodsire to do what? I don't know why I went this. So Yawn happens, I get a free recover, which is cool. Clodsire's back, but I am forced out here. Did I predict a double there or something? I don't know. It's a while back. Okay, flip turn into Helmet. Now Ceruledge comes in. I do kind of want to T-Wave this thing, but I do also want to Spike up, right? Because Meowscarada dies to a Spike, and knocking that thing out is pretty useful. Blastoise is probably not going to get another spin opportunity versus this, as it's at 51, has to take Spike, so it's at 37, 38. So my idea here is if he goes for a spin, I'm going to get some value out of that turn no matter what, and I'm going to try to prevent the spin if I can. I also don't have a great switch in because my Claude isn't quite at full and rocks are up, so Poltergeist is a 2-hit KO, so it's hard to make a safe switch in. I U-turn on the Tinkaton Air Balloon. It pickpockets my Choice Scarf, which is annoying. But now my Terapagos comes in. I'm able to threaten a spin. He goes for T-Wave, knows he has the Ghost in the back. I go for Rocks, but here Meowscarada is going to get sacked to the hazards, and I Earth Power, and this is a turn that I really should have been more heads up on, because this gives him the spin turn for free. It breaks my Terra Shell, and he gets the spin. This is like a really high value spin for him. Obviously, I don't really have much choice. I have to just take it and knock out the Blastoise, which is nice for my Urshifu, right? Because all of a sudden now there's no water resist outside of the Ceruledge Terra, right? But that being said, there is the Ceruledge Terra, so it's hard. Trapagos is kind of forced to stay in on this Ceruledge. I think I could just get some good chip with Earth Power, but it's actually Assault Vest Ceruledge here, so Earth Power is not doing enough. Bitter Blade is recovering most of that off. I take this as an opportunity to pivot into my Clodsire and just recover here. As Slowking comes in, but here he goes for Psychic Noise as I go for a Curse, I believe. So Psychic Noise is annoying, but I do threaten the knockout on this Slowking, which is pretty tough for him. So he is going to Chilly Reception out into Thundurus as I Earthquake. This was pretty sad. But here I am able to just recover here as Psychic doesn't knock me out. And I'm thinking, well, this is tough. You know what I mean? He taunts on my recover. Good prep on his part. And here I'm just going to stay in and go for a Liquidation. This puts him in range of the next Liquidation, and I do have Healing Wish on this thing. So right now I'm thinking my only real win con at this point is the Clodsire. So I go into my Latios. I'm able to Psyshock here, knock this thing out. But the main problem is this Ceruledge is AV, so of course it's going to have Shadow Sneak. I can't really cover this for this at this point. I go Clodsire, but I need this thing. I need the Latios. There's basically no way for me to get the Psyshock off at this point. This Ceruledge is just going to sweep me. You know what I mean? I go to Meowscarada, try to force the Terra with knockoff, so he actually switches into Slowking. Maybe if I didn't sack my Claude, I could force this thing out, like maybe sack my Terapagos, go Meowscarada, force it out, maybe like U-turn out, and then I would get my Healing Wish turn, but it's like so convoluted at that point where it's really hard to say that. And then he still has this Slowking to Psychic Noise me. It's not like I win on the spot, as well as like Terra Grass Ceruledge walls my coverage, so like I'm asking for no crits. I'm asking for a lot there, so it's really hard to, you know, say I should have done a certain thing. He's just playing this super well. It's really hard to find an opening, so credit where it's due. Trapagos comes in on Tinkaton. I'm just going to Earth Power. No, I set up Rocks, right? But Cerulege in, and now this is going to be the nail in the coffin. Sack this guy to rocks. Urshifu comes out. Obviously he's going to tear grass, so I go for the Drain Punch here, but it's too little too late. You know, Bitter Blade is going to put me in Shadow Sneak range, and that's going to be the game. Cerulege is going to sweep me. So I got swept by the team mascot. No! But it's all good. All good, man. Black's played that very well. He deserved to win. Anyways, now we are up against Low QP. This guy, he's like a really old player, right? He was around back in the day. Took a really long break, like 4-year break. Came back and it's like he never missed a beat. So, this team is like kind of a style that he innovated recently with the Zygarde edition, and it's looked really, really strong. Both in DPL and DCL, he like drafted a very, very similar archetype with the Gardevoir, the Thundurus, the Uxie, and the Skarm. This is like the main 4, and then he added a Zygarde at the end both times. So this kind of style is consistent. It works. We know it works, and Lokipi's a good player. He's going to pilot it well. So obviously, this is a tough matchup. Maybe not like the direct Mons matchup, but Lokipi's a good player. He has a good draft. You know, it's not going to be free. Here I am using this Greninja team once again. Funny thing about their team, they drafted every single Tentacruel in Oras, so no matter what, I was going to play into a Tentacruel, which is super funny. I decided that this team is probably going to be my best shot. Greninja, you know, walled by Tentacruel in quotations, you know, but Specs Dark Pulse is going to be a 3-hit KO on most Tentacruel sets, so that's nice. There isn't really a great Dark Resist out of Conkeldurr. If you're bringing Conkeldurr, you're benching something important, right? Because the Zygarde is pretty threatening here, so I figured it's going to be the Conkeldurr or the Zygarde. Now, in a similar way to the throw earlier, in the first game we looked at, my Mega Glade is going to be looking to take advantage of that fighting type. So if Conkeldurr ever kills something, my Mega Glade is going to take that as an opportunity to SD, and low-key it's going to sweep the game no matter what. As if my Glade gets off a free SD, there's very, very little that Lokipi can actually do about it. Like, at best, he's looking at a Prankster T-Wave, sacking Thundurus, and then revenge killing with something else, like Mega Gardevoir. But the main problem with that is I have Shadow Sneak. Mega Gardevoir, if it takes like spikes and rocks, is going to be in range even if it's bulky. What I calced for is like the bulkiest Mega Guard set that made sense in the matchup. And then I EV'd for that after rocks and a spike. And so Quillfish obviously is going to be spikes here. But yeah, let's actually look into a few of the builds that I tried in mocks. So this one was like kind of a Life Orb Greninja with extrasensory spikes. We have a Natural Gift Scizor. This is going to be a Natural Gift Electric, I believe. Covers the Tentacruel and the Scizor in one slot. We have like a Life Orb Landorus with Calm Mind. This thing was really, really strong in mocks. Then we have, once again, a Roselli Spadef Druddigon. This is the only build that I had with Druddigon. So the thing that Druddigon helps with is the Thundurus. So Thundurus is pretty scary, but at the cost of a team slot, right? Because I also really want to bring the top 6, right? The top 6 is all really good. So benching the Togekiss is like kind of tough, right? Because Togekiss is like offensively really good and defensively. It checks the Conk, it checks the Zygarde. Kind of 1v1s Uxie pretty well with Heal Bell sets or something like that. Yeah. So anyways, that is one style that I tried. This is obviously Intimidate Quillfish with Pyappa Berry. Pyappa is there for Mega Gardevoir. I'm able to trade into that thing somewhat reasonably with Poison Jab. Spikes, T-Wave, Taunt. This thing is max speed, max HP, so I figured the Gardevoir would be slower than max speed Quillfish. So pretty much all of my builds feature max speed Quillfish. But yeah. So this team, it was like alright in mocks. Can't complain too much, but I figured there's probably something better we could do. This is the second build that I had. Now this Gallade used to be something else. As you can see in the title in the corner, this was Specs Gren plus Wisp Gallade. Now this is the Gallade that we actually ended up with, and I was testing these two teams, but I ended up liking this Gallade more. So we put this on both teams to test with. But initially this was built around Lead Gallade with Wisp, Wisp, Knock, Poison Jab, and Sub, I think it was. Something like, or was it Taunt? It was one of those things. So like, it was actually getting tons of value early game. It's really hard for low QP to deal with that thing at lead. A lot of times it was burning Uxie, it was burning Skarm, it was chipping the Gardevoir with Poison Jab, stuff like that. Thundurus wasn't able to do much for it because it was a very, very, very bulky Gallade. So I was able to basically favorably trade into everything, but the problem with that is it doesn't win the game, you know? This set that we landed on, it wins the game, you know what I mean? So this is something to work towards in the game plan. As well as that, there's SD Scizor. This is something that was really, really strong in mocks. I don't think it actually ended up in the final build, this SD Scizor, but it was really, really good in mocks. Landorus with Yachi Berry. This was nice. I really enjoyed the Yachi Berry, as it allows me to check the Thundurus HP Ice even if I'm chipped. So that's nice. And then the special defense investment is so if it gets +2, I still live the HP Ice with Yachi Berry. Now this one was physical with Rock Slide, Earthquake, SD Rocks. I never really found an opportunity to click SD in mocks, but we didn't really find another slot that was better. The main thing that these other builds had is Spikes, Explosion, Quillfish plus Specs Gren. This is a combo that I really, really enjoyed because what's the switch into Quillfish? Obviously it's going to be the Tentacruel, right? You want to get that spin off and nothing else really wants to come in with the combination of Taunt, Rocky Helmet, right? Maybe the Zygarde can come in, but booming on that thing is also nice. But yeah, if I'm able to get the boom on Tentacruel, that really opens up my Greninja. As you can see, there's no other water resist on the team, which is why we're Specs in the first place. It's very easy to lock into water moves if we get this sequence. Then Scarf Togekiss just revenge kills a bunch of stuff, with Heal Bell, of course, to, you know, just in case something gets statused, like the Scizor or the Gallade, my two win cons. But the build we actually ended up landing on, it actually features a Scarf Scizor. This was actually really, really useful into the Thundurus, believe it or not, and the Gardevoir. So Thundurus was pretty annoying after I decided to bench the Druddigon. So having something faster than it, being the Scizor, and does a lot of damage with Double Edge, that was nice to have, of course. As well as SD Scizor does still have to break through Skarm. It's not like an instant win. There was one mock where I like pretty much instantly won because the Skarm went down early, but that wasn't like every mock, that was an outlier. So at the end of the day, we went with Scarf on the Scizor. It gives me something faster than the Gardevoir because, of course, a lot of times the Gardevoir is going to be EV'd for Bullet Punch, so getting a Scarf U-turn really alleviates a lot of the lead guard problems that I was having. So yeah, there is that. One thing in mocks that I was leading quite a bit with is Togekiss. At the end of the day, we decided to lead with Scizor instead, but Togekiss at lead was getting quite a lot done. It used to be Flamethrower over Defog, I think it was. Or maybe it was over T-Wave. It was something like that. But this set, it's a little bit of a complicated EV spread, but it basically lives one from everything and then kills everything at +2. It's not too much deeper than that. So this thing was like a really good like 1-for-1, 1-for-2 kind of trade at the beginning, which was nice. Yeah. Decided to go for Dual Stab because I do 1v1 the Skarm no matter what with the combination of T-Wave and Air Slash. Like, be real, he's not breaking through that. And then Quillfish, we went, this one is a little bit more offensive than the other one, just max attack, max speed. And then if Conkeldurr comes in, the main sequence was sack this into Gallade and win the game. So we knew Conkeldurr was more of a liability, don't really need to prep defensively into it if I'm able to take advantage of it that hard offensively. So yeah, same set, P-Jab, Taunt, Spikes, Explosion. And this one, we actually ended up being Toxic over SD. So I lied, we did find something better. But yeah, outside of that, the team is there. Let's look into the replay here. So we do see no Conkeldurr, which I was sad about. A lot of games ended by SDing on Conkeldurr, so not seeing that was like kind of rough. I was like, when am I going to find an SD opportunity with Gallade? I need to play well to find that opportunity. Zygarde is pretty threatening, but I do have ways to check it. It's just difficult, you know what I mean? So let's get right into the game. There's no Terra types to go over. Scizor lead into Thundurus. I'm going to U-turn. That actually reveals literally max defense on this Thundurus. So I go into Lando on the T-Bolt, but HP Ice is going to pop my Yachi Berry, do 40% as I Rock Slide, and it lives thanks to the max defense, basically. So that's tough. I go into the Scizor on the next HP Ice, and unfortunately U-turn doesn't quite knock it out, so I do kind of feel the need to go for a knockoff here, as Mike Tyson, the Skarmory, comes in on knockoff, reveals it to be Choice Scarf, weak armor. So I'm like, okay, we did not mock against this, you know what I mean? We did not mock this. I go into Quillfish just to intimidate it, because I figure if you're Scarf, you're probably going to be offensive with like Brave Bird, Iron Head, and I don't really have a great flying resist on this team, so it kind of makes sense, you know, being the Scarf Skarm. If you take a step back, there's no great flying resist, so kind of get it. So I go Quillfish to soften that up, but he spikes up, and you're going to see a taunt come out. So this is Taunt, Spikes, Scarf, Skarmory, goes for Iron Head on my Togekiss. I get my weakness policy, and Dazzling Gleam does knock it out from here, but I get flinched, which totally sucks, right? Now Tentacruel is going to come in on this Dazzling Gleam, which is cool. I do need Chip on this thing for my Greninja, and Sludge Wave is not going to knock me out. So I go for a T-Wave, and now an Air Slash is going to come out, but I miss Air Slash on this Skarmory, and it outspeeds my Togekiss. Air Slash also would have knocked this thing out at +2, so like, it's just tough, man. It's just tough. What can you do? If the flinch didn't happen, I kill this, and then literally nothing kills me from 60%. Like, I'm being so serious right now. I would have gotten another KO. So this is like a 2 KO swing on that flinch plus miss, which is like, how are we going to recover from this? Greninja comes in. Tentacruel's already chipped and it's paralyzed, so Dark Pulse is pretty free. There's no resist. Gardevoir comes in. I don't really have anything that OHKOs this thing, unfortunately, if it is bulky, which it obviously reveals to be bulky. So I Dark Pulse for 40%. This now puts it in range of my Landorus Earthquake, my Scizor Bullet Punch, my Gallade +2 Sneak, that sort of thing. I decided to go to my Landorus because I figure rocks are going to be really, really important here. If he's going to switch out on my Landorus, then I get rocks up, and I'm potentially able to Toxic the Uxie, which is going to be the switch in if he does switch. If that happens, I'm all of a sudden back in this game, right? Rocks are up, Thundurus is dead, the spinner is paralyzed at, what, 55%, gets boomed on. You know, it's not going to get a spin opportunity this game, most likely. So if that happens, I'm back in the game. I have to play to my outs. I go for rocks, and he stays in Hyper Voices. So he gets 2 with the Gardevoir. I go for my Quillfish here. Like, I'm pretty sure I'm going to be faster. He's not going to expect it. The Poison Jab comes out. But now Tentacruel comes in. Now, if I want this this Thundurus to remain dead, I have to boom. There's not really an option here. It's really a forced line at this point. So I boom. My Scizor comes in on the Uxie, but here he has the Rock Sack. Not a whole lot I can do here. He Rock Sacks to this on my U-turn, so now Zygarde gets a free DD on the U-turn. It can DD or it can Earthquake. Either one is perfectly winning for him. I go into Gallade. It's the only play that I can do. Earthquake does a lot. He actually switches here, just in case I'm like fast Ice Punch or something like that. As I sneak just for a little bit of chip, I'm playing towards like a Scizor endgame with U-turn, but not going to be the case. Scizor going to come in, and it's going to lose to this Zygarde 1v1. It's Citrus Berry anyways, but it was well played by him. I can't really complain too much on like he deserved the win, but I feel like I also deserve the win. I feel like I played well enough to win, but it would have been a completely different game if that Togekiss flinch never happened. So we'll never know how exactly this would end up. But I feel like I definitely had a strong chance to win in that position. Didn't end up happening, so that sucked. This week ended up in a draw, if I remember correctly. So we did end up making playoffs. This was week 7. So can't be too sad about that. The rest of my team was able to clutch up. But it obviously sucks for the personal record, you know? There's not a whole lot I could do in this situation. Maybe if I had SD Scizors here, it would have been pretty nice. Especially considering it was Scarf Skarmory. Obviously SD Scizor looks a little bit better, but I can't know that until the game happens. So it's like hindsight is 2020. But yeah, unfortunate. But now let's look into this semifinals match up against Trick of Eye. It's TJ. This guy, he's bringing this team, which is Kieran Black, and I'm using this other Oras team that we built. Now this is a pretty cool Oras team. It's like double steel, double ground type beat. It's like really hard to prep for this kind of team. Like, what hidden power you're ever gonna be, right? Zapdos, you know, is it gonna be HP ground for Stunfisk plus Heatran? Is it gonna be Heat Wave? Is it gonna be HP ice for the grounds but be walled by Heatran? Is it gonna be toxic for Latios and Stunfisk? Like, there's a lot of set variants, but it's never gonna cover everything. You know what I mean? Kieran Black basically has to be 4 attacks to hit everything, so it really limits its opportunities to like be Roost or anything like that. So Hazards Up is going to be really nice into Kieran Black. Greninja obviously is a massive threat. Azumarill is my main resist to its stabs, but that's going to get worn down pretty quick, and Gunk Shot does exist, and it does quite a lot of damage to my Azumarill. As well as, like, there's alright Azumarill switch-ins. It's not like it gets a KO every time it comes in, so the reward is not even that great for switching into Gren. Right, so let's look into a few of the builds that I tried before we get to the final build. So this Landorus was actually super funny. It's like almost max special defense with Calm Mind, Rest, Chesto Berry. Because if you look at his team, the majority of it is special attackers. Like, the only physical attacker that I have to worry about is like Mega Bayonet, and like maybe a Kieran Black, but it's very, very easy for Kieran Black to justify a set of Ice Beam, HP Fire, Earth Power, and Fusion Bolt. It's like, that set is so exact into my team, you cannot deviate it at all, basically. It's really, really hard to fit any other move. The only thing you would ever even consider for a second is like Dragon Claw, just because it knocks out Latios in one hit, where Ice Beam potentially does not. But outside of that, there's not really a whole lot Kieran Black really wants to run. So I figure if we're able to Calm Mind, well, actually that kind of logic goes towards my Latios here. If I'm able to Calm Mind Light Screen up in front of the Kieran Black as I force it out, Sylveon comes in. This Latios was actually winning a bunch of mocks early in the week. Basically I Calm Mind on Sylveon, I Light Screen up. Some sets had weakness policy on it, and if that happened, I was able to get like many KOs as he chipped me down slowly into Mega Bayonet range or something like that. But this one's leftovers, so Calm Mind, Psyshock, Dragon Pulse. A pretty cool set. This is like a bulkier team. Obviously, everything is pretty bulky on this squad. It's like built around Light Screen, making everything unkillable basically. This Scizor set was actually pretty good, honestly. Toxic, Defog, Roost, Bullet Punch. This was good into Mega Bayonet, if it wasn't Will-O-Wisp, stuff like that. Toxic into Zapdos is useful. And this Heatran, right? There's no fire resist on his team, really, outside of Greninja. So obviously I wanted to bring Heatran. Wasn't sure exactly what set. If it was going to be like specially defensive with Magma Storm, Lava Plume, Toxic Protect, as you can see. I also tried Rocks on this thing, but I also considered Scarf, and that's the set that I ended up landing on, is Scarf, because it outspeeds the whole team. There's no great fire resist. It's kind of a no-brainer. But I wanted to do due diligence, make sure I at least tried the Spadef set, which was good, but it wasn't as good. And this was Wakanberry Azumarill. This HP in Spadef allows me to live a Sludge Bomb from full from Roserade, so that's nice if I want to trade into it. This was my lead on this build, so being able to stay in on that is pretty useful. And then Stunfisk, this is like a pretty easy set. I didn't really change too much about this through the whole week. It was just a little bit of special attack, so Zapdos doesn't sub on me very easily. Thunderbolt. And then the rest is specially defensive. Just check Zapdos as well as possible, basically. So this team was pretty cool. Maybe not the most reliable, because actually I ran into a bunch of trouble with Return Sylveon of all things. Return Sylveon was actually a big roadblock to my 2 Calm Mind sets, and then outside of that I don't really have great win conditions, right? The other sets are all like Toxic, Protect, Toxic Spadef. So like if it was like a heal bell return Sylveon, like this team will lose to it, which is like super funny. But yeah, this is the next thing I tried with like a Scarf Heatran. This thing has HP fighting for the Greninja, and then obviously Lava Plume, Heat Wave, not Heat Wave, Overheat. It's just a good Pokemon. I found a lot of success with Scarf Heatran here. Another like Calm Mind Latios set. This time it's like near max HP with Roost. This is designed to just like set up in front of a bunch of stuff and just kind of like outwall it, outbulk it. We have Sub Calm Mind Landorus. This is also pretty good. Not quite as high of a ceiling as the Calm Mind Rest Chestoberry, which, you know, threatens to just sweep the game outright. But this was pretty good at getting like a 2-for-1 trade. This time, Toxic Swords Dance Roost. I decided to go against the Defog idea, as I figured a lot of the mocks, the Rosary was not really getting up spikes or T-spikes, as T-spikes are really bad into this team as a whole. Like, already the top 4 are immune, so what's even the point? So I felt I didn't really need the Defog. Place it with SD. This set was actually really strong. Not quite what I ended up on, but pretty similar. And then this Stunfisk, I tried out Yawn. It was less good as Toxic. Then this is Azumarill. This pace is titled DPL versus TJ. I meant DCL, but whatever. It's titled Abhorrent Azumarill. I was like, I have this idea. I know it's not going to work, but I need to try it. I tried it. Spoiler, it didn't work, you know? So let's look at the final build that I ended up on. So obviously this Landorus is like so freaking good, right? Now Life Orb, Physical, Adamant, Max Attack. Let's look at the Landorus switch-ins here. It's like Sylveon maybe, and then like Claydol. And then outside of that, you're relying on maybe Zapdos to want to come in one time. Maybe like an Assault Vest Kyurem Black we saw one time in mocks, and then like outside of that you're just cooked, right? It OHKOs the whole roster after rocks almost. It's like very, very close to that. So obviously I wanted to bring this set with Rock Polish 3 attacks, Life Orb, Adamant, you know? Because I don't really plan on taking too many hits with this thing, so I don't mind the Life Orb recoil, and those rolls are just so sweet, not gonna lie. Anyways, Scarf Heatran as usual, and then this Scizor is actually not specially defensive, it's very speedy, and it has Adamant 180 attack. So what this does is +2 Bullet Punch is going to be a one-shot on Mega Banette after Rock, so I don't need to play any games with Destiny Bond, Will-O-Wisp, anything like that. I'm going to outspeed all of the likely Bayonets, and I'm going to one-shot max HP after Rocks. And I found getting Rocks up was very, very reliable with Stunfisk this week. So all of my calcs are basically around after Rocks. Then Scarf Latios, I was having a lot of trouble with Greninja. It was by far the most annoying Pokemon in mocks. So having a second Scarfer that's faster than it was really useful. Draco Meteor obviously kills it from full because I'm modest max special attack. Then Trick Defog, just a little bit of utility, but mostly I'm just clicking Draco Meteor on this. As you can see, the only fairy is Sylveon, and Sylveon into double steel is a little bit tricky, right? Triple steel if you count Pawniard, that's my goat. And I figure Sylveon, if it does come, will try to switch into Landorus and fail miserably, so I figured either way it's going to be fine. Then obviously the same Stunfisk set, this is pretty standard. I actually ended up being Limber rather than Static, because in a mock I was trying to Toxic a Mega Banette and I got the Static on it, and then I was like, well, this is super annoying, and what do I do now? Because there's no Ghost Resist, which is kind of rough. So I am that, like, the only contact moves are like U-turn Zapdos, which who cares, right? You're not going to pair that anyways. But yeah, and then this Azumarill is going to be the Wakon Berry variant, as I did really enjoy having the Kyurem Black pivot mid-game. Right. So let's look into the game here. As you can see, there is no Sylveon. This is really good for my Latios. This is really good for my Heatran, funny enough, because Heatran doesn't actually break Sylveon with the set that I have right now. I actually ended up with Sleep Talk on the Heatran. Thought I'd mention that. Just because the Roserade with Sleep Powder was pretty annoying in mocks. I wanted to have something for it. But yeah. And basically any pull on Heatran is good. so you don't have to worry too much about sleep talk rolls. Anyways, let's get into this game. Kieran Black is going to lead into the Stunfisk. This happened all the time in mocks. I'm always going to get rocks up. Rocks are way too important. Like, I tried a bunch of times just switching to Azumarill in this position, and you really feel the lack of rocks when you're playing against Kieran Black and Zapdos especially. Like, it just became so much harder, where I'm like, I'm perfectly fine sacking my Stunfisk basically to Ice Beam if it means I get rocks up for the rest of the team. Because as you can see, the only removal is Defog Zapdos, which I know is going to be pressured pretty hard by my team. It's going to be really difficult for him to find Defog turns. And if he does Defog, Stunfisk comes in on it and just rocks again. It's really no issue. So now, Earth Power into Stunfisk does very little damage. I'm going to go Azu as the pivot into Ice Beam. I have Wakanberry, so I will live the Fusion Bolt. I get off a free play rough. Roserade dodges that, so unlucky, but Heatran comes in on the Leech Seed. I expected either a Spike or a grass move to come out there, so Heatran made sense. I overheat here, force this out. Zapdos comes in. It's pressure, so it can be defog. That's important to note in Oras. Citrus Berry, so it actually ends up remaining pretty healthy. But here I go into my Stunfisk, as I know a defog could come. I want rocks up always. And here I'm able to just Toxic here, but I make a silly play. I go Heatran. Now the reason this is silly, right? This Zapdos was at 60% with rocks up, and my main win condition here is going to be Landorus and Scizor. Both of them do appreciate the Zapdos being a little bit weakened, you know what I mean? So if I Toxic there, it ensures either the Zapdos is 60% switched out, or it's poisoned, right? Which is also perfectly fine. But here I go Heatran on some tryhard bullshit, and trying to catch the Roserade, get off a overheat turn. Like, it's a good play, I think, but it didn't work out, and obviously the punish was not worth the risk. Because now the Zapdos is at full, I have to go back into my Stunfisk. I don't want to risk HP on my Heatran, of course. And now he just U-turns, predicts that effortlessly, and now my Stunfisk is in versus Kieran Black. So, well played on his part, catching the double like that. I'm just gonna have to deal with that. Azumarill comes in on the Ice Beam, so that's good stuff. I play off into Roserade, but it reveals Rocky Helmet. So at this point, I'm like, my Azumarill doesn't check anything, right? It's slower than everything and dies, aside from maybe the Cobalion, which I don't kill back. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to force this Roserade to remain low. This thing is annoying for my Stunfisk. That's pretty much it, though. So I want to at least punish a hazard going up. He goes for Leech and misses. Tough luck, but obviously Leech miss doesn't matter at all here. It only would have mattered. It just didn't matter, actually, because he died and I switched out immediately. So Heatran in on rocks. Here I do get a free Lava Plume here, as Lava Plume into Zapdos does 32%. So it's max speed F Zapdos. We knew this from the overheat damage, but I do get a burn, which is really important. Now, I did 32 the last time, but I calced it, and that was a very high roll. I do not want my Heatran taking a T-Wave or anything like that. So I'm going to actually switch out here. I figure if he stays in, he's probably going to T-Bolt here, but he actually U-turns, which I'm perfectly fine with, honestly, because now the Zapdos is at, what, 7% and burned. So this thing's basically dead. It's not static, so my Scizor is free in the end game. If I get a SD, all of a sudden it's looking very good. So he U-turns on my Landorus into Kieran Black and dies to Life Orb Adamant Earthquake. He told me after the game it was AV. He predicted special Landorus. And at the very least, he needed to clear me from being Scarf. So this does that for him. Greninja comes in. I'm just going to sack my Azumarill. I have it as a sack. May as well use it. Waterfall. So here I'm thinking it's probably Choice Banded Greninja. Just based on Waterfall being a weak move, it doesn't have very high attack stat. So if you want to do actual damage to my team, you need to be either like Choice Band or like Mystic Water, something like that. Raw Waterfall is not going to cut it, I don't think. So I go into my Latios. This is a free Draco knockout. He uses the Zapdos sack here. Well played. And then now the Bayonet is going to come in and going to Pursuit Trap me. This is something we saw in mocks. Not a whole lot I can do about it in this situation, though. Like, what do you want me to do about this? Stay in Draco for like 40%? No. It's more worth it to just switch and hope he doesn't have Pursuit. But whatever. It's all good. I still have a Scarfer. I have my Heatran, which will be able to outspeed everything. Landorus comes in. I know this is going to die after rocks. It does 88% min. It knocks out the Bayonet. If he Will-O-Wisps, I still 2-hit KO. It's all good. Forces a KO basically. Now Landorus is going to be his time to go. It's slower than everything remaining. Now Scizor comes in. I'm thinking if it's locked into Waterfall, it's fine. I can just U-turn on this thing. Cobalion comes in, reveals Rocky Helmet, which is a little bit annoying. Heatran comes in. I could have gone Stunfisk or Heatran here. I figured Heatran was a little bit better because Lava Plume will actually one-shot this Cobalion, whereas Earth Power will not. As well as if Greninja comes in, it's risking the burn. So I have multiple things going for me here. It's physical Greninja, so a burn would be devastating. He doesn't get the burn and reveals Water Shuriken. Now from this Shuriken damage, I'm able to calculate this thing is either Adamant or Mystic Water in Torrent. So it's not banded, which is pretty scary. So if it was banded, maybe I would have been able to Roost here. But since it's not, I wanted to just Bullet Punch. It is in range of Bullet Punch at 29. And if Cobalion comes in, I basically have to hope it's not Taunt or anything like that. Taunt or SD would end the game. But here he reveals T-Wave. So I'm like, well, now it's pretty free. I can just Swords Dance and my Scizor will 1v1 the rest of this game. It clearly 1v1s this Cobalion. He's Iron Heading in desperation, trying to Paraflinch me down. He's going to reveal a CC, but he doesn't want the defense drops. Now here CC would 2-hit KO, so probably just go for it, but he doesn't end up doing it. But here basically my Scizor going to set up to +6, and it should be able to sweep this game with Bullet Punch, because Cobalion obviously cannot 1v1 me. Eventually he's going to have to CC, -1 defense. At this point, Bullet Punch is not a KO, so I need to SD up to +6. Now I'm just going to Roost back up to full, give me the best odds at 1v1ing this Greninja. And now Bullet Punch is here, Bullet Punch is now, that's 1. Takes Rocky Helmet, but now the Greninja... Now, I don't know if you're aware, folks, this is in range of +6 Bullet Punch, but 1 para, 2 paras, and that's going to be the game because it's in Torrent and it has Shuriken to outspeed the next Bullet Punch, and is obviously going to 1v1 my Stunfisk at 47. That's just tough. Unfortunate. The sad part is this is in playoffs, right? If it's in regular season, I'm really not too bothered by losing to, especially to hacks like this. But in playoffs, obviously every game matters. Fortunately, my team had my back. We were able to win 5-3, I believe. So we actually make it to finals. And yeah, so despite this loss, all is well. Alright, now, oh, this one's a little bit big. Let me make that a little bit smaller, fit on the screen. This is the finals matchup against Potato Chan. This guy, a lot of people are not going to be familiar with Potato Chan, which is understandable. I wasn't really familiar with him either until I played him, looked into him a little bit more. This guy actually won some Smogon tournament or like team tournament, something like that. So obviously he can play the game. And up against Band Chasers, we know all the prep is going to be pretty good. We know Genius is going to have a hand in pretty much every matchup. So really can't take this one as like... I can't take this one easy, you know. It's finals. I'm going to go as hard as I can. And yeah, this is actually during a week vacation on my end. I was actually in Florida for this time. So I ended up prepping and playing entirely on mobile, which is annoying if you've ever done that before, but you got to do what you got to do. So I have 2 builds here that my team ended up coming up with. But one thing I want to point out in this game real quick is that Darmanitan Galar is very, very powerful into all of these Pokemon, right? The only switch-ins are Milotic and Physically Defensive Scrafty, right? And the problem with those is that they're very much 3-hit KO'd by Ice Move, especially if it's Choice Banded Darmanitan. Now initially I was Scarf Darmanitan as like a Dragonite answer, something faster than Victini and Coco. It was really important for that structure. And let's look at the first initial build. This is not the one that we ended up going with, but Zeraora with specially defensive Calm Mind sub Snarl. So if you look at it, all of the switch-ins for Zeraora, they tend to be special, right? Nidoqueen could be Earth Power plus Fire Blast. It's really good coverage into my team. It could be Earthquake as well, but Earth Power is kind of what I envisioned when I made the set, as well as like I'm able to very effortlessly sub on Milotic, even Victini, right, with a Blue Flare, because all of the Victinis in Mox were special. There were like no exceptions. So I knew this thing would be able to check the Victini with Snarl, and then even at neutral, I'm only taking less than half from Blue Flare, so it's like a really valuable piece to have. Hatterene obviously is going to be special. Tapu Koko, of course, unless it's U-turn, it's all its other moves are going to be special into me, as it is pretty much mandatory to have Grass Knot versus my team. So special Koko just makes sense. U-turn is not going to break my sub. So sub Calm Mind looks really, really powerful here, especially if the Nidoqueen is Earth Power. So that's the set I decided to go with. We did try a few things with like Eject Pack CC, which was able to, you know, get some momentum as the Nidoqueen comes in, get a free Darmanitan turn. But that ended up being a little bit less reliable. So we ended up going for this Calm Mind set. But yeah, this first set also features like a sub-toxic Celesteela, a sub-toxic Blastoise, and a toxic Swampert. So a lot of toxic on this team, right? And the reason for that is my Scarf Darmanitan is really good against his offense. I don't really need anything else to check his offense. As well as Salazzle was actually really powerful in Mox. It was basically getting a KO every time it came in, and a great bonus is that I was able to absorb T-Spikes from the Nidoqueen. So without this, those are really obnoxious. This Blastoise was really, really excellent versus team. So sub-toxic is the way to deal with Milotic. Obviously, Milotic cannot 1v1 a sub-toxic Blastoise, especially with speed. I'm able to be faster than most Milotics. This is for like a +1 Victini after a Shell Smash. So basically the only thing this Blastoise doesn't 1v1 like very, very comfortably is the Dragonite and the Hatterene. Now Dragonite, I'm able to Toxic it, and then like my Steelo will be able to wall it out. Hatterene though was a little bit annoying with Giga Drain. It was always like recovering a little bit too much damage, or a little bit too much HP, where my +2 surfs were not quite enough even in Torrent. So we ended up not going for this Blastoise at the end of the day, but I just wanted to say this Blastoise was really, really good anyways. You know, it was doing work, it's just it didn't end up on the final team. Now Salazzle, as you can see, the only poison resist is Nidoqueen, which if we're getting chip on Nidoqueen, that's really, really good for Zeraora, so I was perfectly happy just thudding Sludge Waves into that if that's what was weakening it for Zeraora. So that was nice. And then outside of that, it's like a good thing faster than Victini, does a lot of damage. Yeah. Anyways, this thing also functioned as a Scrafty switch-in for this version, which was pretty nice. But yeah, especially defensive lefties perts. Yeah, and then Scarf Darmanitan. It's pretty simple build, and I was actually winning pretty much every mock, but it wasn't like smooth sailing. All of the games were close. So I was like, the team feels like it has correct sets. Like for this style of team, I think I think you can't really get too much better than this, where it's like a bulky wear it down over time kind of thing. But I was like, it's good, but it's not excellent, you know what I mean? I wanted to have a little bit more of an advantage going in based on my build. So basically I was like, hey Addison, can you build a skeleton for me, and then I'll fill it out with things that make sense to me. And she was like, I got you, bro. So the main concept of this team is the Choice Banded Darmanitan plus the Tailwind Whimsicott. This is something that is really, really powerful in a lot of endgames. It's something that bailed me out of some bad positions when I was mocking. So like, I always knew I had Tailwind plus CV Darm in the back, and that allowed me to play a little bit more aggressively and make some more risks. Sometimes they don't work out and I have to get bailed out by that combination, but it was able to bail me out every single time I was in a bad position in mocks. So I really had a lot of trust in this combination of two. As well as that, Whimsicott is a offensive beast in its own right. Energy Ball, Shadow Ball, and Moonblast we had initially. There's nothing really that wants to switch in on that combo with Modest Life Orb. It's 2-KOing the entire roster pretty comfortably, as long as I click the right button, which is not that hard to do on Whimsicott. But anyways, so there was a mock towards the actual game, like a last minute mock where it came up that the Swoobat was actually a big problem for this team. If I accidentally give it like one turn, then the game is over, right? Because a lot of these guys are slower, or they don't break the sub, you know what I mean? Like a sub CM kind of thing. Even if it's not sub, like Blastoise is not doing any damage back. Swampert is a little bit too slow paced, like Toxic is not going to be fast enough. Steela can 1v1 it, but not super reliably, right? Because Steela does have to take on Dragonite for this matchup. So overall, I found it was actually pretty easy to lose to like a Calm Mind thing like that. So I actually ended up putting an Encore on, as I felt like Moonblast was more of a luxury, not a necessity. Because if you look at his team, Energy Ball and Shadow Ball kind of covers everything. If Dragonite wants to try to set up on me, I still have Encore, you know what I mean? And if Scrafty stays on me, he's clinically insane, you know? But there's no real situation where I need Moonblast necessarily. So I felt pretty comfortable going for Encore over Moonblast. So that was nice. It makes some of the mid-grounds a little bit harder, right? But I felt confident I could click the right button between Energy Ball and Shadow Ball. It's not that hard. This Blastoise is actually Boots with Spin. Since there's no Salazzle on this build, we do need something to remove T-Spikes, especially pairing with this Zeraora set, which if T-Spikes go up, this thing is completely useless. Like, the difference is so big between Zera when it's poisoned and when it's not versus this team. Yeah. Anyways, still Shell Smash, this time 2 attacks. We wanted something that can like actually threaten the Dragonite outside of Steela. So having Ice Beam with a little bit of physical bulk was nice. This spread with 20 speed is able to outspeed a Coco after a Shell Smash. Unfortunately, I can't cover +1 Victini with this spread, but that's something that I'm not too worried about, as even +1 Victini is outsped by Tailwind Darm, so I always have that emergency button, as well as Swampert is a pretty big stop to that thing with Rindo Berry. So there's that. This Celesteela, I decided to just go for max defense because Dragonite was super annoying. Heavy Slam, Leech, Toxic Protect, just basically as good as you can get into Dragonite solely. The only thing that really threatens it is like a Heal Bell DD Roost kind of thing, which I'm pretty sure we can 1v1 anyways with Leech Seed, so it's not a big deal. Yep. And like the main concept of the team is really cool, right? CB Darm. CB Darm with Icicle Crash, 3-8 KOs Milotic, and Earthquake will do like 70%. You know, so it's like if you get one prediction right with Darm, all of a sudden the team is completely opened up. So that was something I really liked about this build. And let's get into the game. Alright, so one thing you'll notice immediately is there's no Dragonite, which is insane. I faced Dragonite every single mock and it was pretty annoying, honestly. So seeing no Dragonite, instantly my confidence went up. I was like, this is awesome. There's no ground resist for my CB Darm EQ. Perfect. And then obviously I was leading Swampert every single mock. The main thing is like Hatterene is a little bit annoying, right? Because I do want rocks up, but I can't really rock when Hatterene is alive. It's just gonna magic bounce it, and if I magic bounce rocks, it's like a super big deal, right? Because it threatens a Giga Drain, which means my Blastoise doesn't really want to come in. So Steel is coming in on Giga Drain, takes rocks, and then it forces it out. But then what? And then something offensive comes in like the Victini, and now I'm taking rocks plus everything. It could U-turn. It gets out of range, or it gets out of control pretty fast. I don't want to be switching around on rocks at all. That's why my Blastoise is spin. So I'm never going to rock when Hatterene is alive, basically. Anyways, let's get into it. Swampert leads off into Nidoqueen. I'm perfectly happy staying in to chip this thing. It reveals to be physically defensive with Citrus Berry, so pretty good prep. It's not going to end up getting chipped too bad in exchange for that T-Spike, but now I'm going to go Blastoise and spin. I know this Hatterene is physically defensive by the flip turn damage, so this Giga Drain is going to bounce off. We did end up going against a lot of offensive Life Orb Hatterene, so I was pretty relieved to see it wasn't that. And now Nuzzle comes out, pairing my Steela, but this is perfectly fine. Steela was basically a dedicated check to Dragonite, so I don't really care too much about it. judging that Dragonite is not here. Now Swampert comes in on the Victini pretty comfortably. Now a U-turn comes out, so it reveals it's not Scarf, which is really important information for my Zeraora. Now I Earthquake into Hatterene into Flip Turn. He actually doubles into Koko. I'm not really too sure why. I go Darm. Now this is a pretty important turn, right? Because this kind of reveals a little bit of information, right? So I'm kind of trying to bluff Scarf Darm and bait a switch into Milotic here, because if this happens, then the game is immediately wide open for me. Like all of a sudden, all of my Pokemon, they're just a little bit more better. More better. Shout out to Grammar. But basically, a free Earthquake I'm not going to pass up on here. I figured he would probably switch Scouting Scarf. But here he Volt switches. It only has 47%, so I know this is like very, very bulky on the Koko. And I Earthquake for 41%, so this is physically defensive Scrafty with leftovers. So this is going to be the dedicated Darm check. I go to Steela. Like I said, I don't really care too much about the HP on this thing. I don't want anything else getting knocked. And now I go for a Toxic. Then after this, I think I'm just going to Leech Seed, right? No, I Heavy Slam. What a goat. So I get some chip on Nidoqueen. This is going to be really important. Now, Milotic comes in as I go Blastoise. I just don't want to let the hazards go up for free, basically. Whimsicott comes in on the Milotic as it subs. And this tells me quite a bit about this Milotic set. So if you're subbing on Blastoise, does that mean you have speed investment? Because obviously my Blastoise could be a little bit speedy, has Toxic. It's really not that unreasonable here. So if this Milotic has speed, I'm thinking this thing is literally going to die to Earthquake from this range. Like, max defense takes 70. So if I'm able to get Rocks up at some point, my Darm with Tailwind is looking pretty good, because not even Milotic can withstand one hit. The Scrafty is already taking a little bit of chip, and here I Shadow Ball because I know he's going to switch. He has to switch to something. What's he going to switch into? An Energy Ball. It's going to be Victini, right? So obviously a Shadow Ball is going to 2-hit KO that thing. It reveals to be very, very bulky on this Victini. Usually it was doing like around 50 with Shadow Ball, but here it's doing 39%. So I don't know if that's AV offensive or if it's like max HP, no speed type of thing. Honestly, both of them are pretty reasonable against my team. But anyways, I Shadow Ball again into Hatterene. Here I'm like, Cuss Tap makes a little bit too much sense. I'm going to scout for that. Go into my Zeraora, predicting the like Nuzzle. Well, if he goes for anything else, I'm like max Spadef, so it's not a big deal. Healing Wishes into Victini. I'm just going to Snarl that thing if I know he probably wants to switch out. So being able to catch the Nidoqueen, get that a little bit of chip. Obviously not a whole lot, it's just 14%. But it means that Blastoise can come in a little bit more comfortably. I'll just spin these rocks away immediately. And I'm getting a little bit more chip on this Nidoqueen, so this is nice. I'm perfectly fine trading my Blastoise for Nidoqueen. Here I'm just going to Surf, I believe, yeah. So I'm in Torrent, so this does a lot to Koko. Another Citrus Berry. And now another Roost comes out. Here I'm just going to stack my Blastoise to ensure this Koko remains low. On turn 23, I really did expect like a Grass Knot to come out, because he doesn't really know how much special bulk I have on this Blastoise. I have quite a bit. I'm pretty sure I can live a Grass Knot from defensive Koko. And Grass Knot kind of covers the Swampert, which, Hat being gone, you don't really want rocks going up, right? So I figured with multiple electric immunities that can come in, he doesn't really want to Volt Switch on me, so I stay in one time to Surf. I could have Shelf Smashed here, but then his Koko can Roost, and then he gets the opportunity to switch out into Milotic potentially. So he doesn't actually get forced to have the Koko low. Staying in with Blastoise forces the Koko to be low, which is fine. Now Victini comes in. Here I go into my Zeraora. I'm able to just Calm Mind on this thing for free. Now Scrafty comes in. There is electric terrain up, so I'm just going to go for a T-Bolt. He reveals Protect at this turn. No, he actually already revealed it, but he goes for Protect, stalls out the terrain, but T-Bolt is doing a lot. He knocks off my leftovers, which is a big deal, but at this point, I already have the boost up. I need this Scrafty gone. This is the only thing standing in the way of Tailwind plus Darm, because like, otherwise I just get Rocks up and everything is in range, right? So I'm really playing towards that end game. I get the Para full Para, but he has leftovers Protect, so he could potentially get out of range by Drain Punching and then having 2 turns of leftovers, but I think to do that he would have needed to Protect on turn 28, right? Because here T-Bolt's doing 41, right? as we can see, it does 41 or 39. So let's call it 40 for the sake of argument. So he's at 15%. So leftovers is going to put him at 21%. Now, we saw knockoff do 32%, which means this is no attack Scrafty. We do this already from the Dharm calc, but just to have some damage gauge into the Zero at 32%, and this is stronger than Drain Punch, you know what I mean? So Drain Punch, based on head calcs, is doing like 27-ish. Like, 27 is not a lot, and the recovery is only 33%. So, judging they have like pretty similar HP stats, Zero and Scrafty, it's not a huge discrepancy. You're only really recovering like maybe 8%, maybe 9% max. So, let's call it 30% that he would be at if he got the Drain Punch recovery off. My Zero Aura would still be pretty healthy. Like, I'd still be above 50% right here, around 50. So he'd be in range of the next Thunderbolt after that, and then he would need to protect on a Thunderbolt. If I Calm Mind on the protect, then he's goobed, right? Everything will get owned. So even if he gets this Drain Punch off, it's not the end of the world for me, you know what I mean? Here I'm able to sub on the Coco. I want to cover it for a Toxic. Nothing he has is going to break my sub, and Zero's just going to win the game here. But as you can see, like, even if he got the Drain Punch off, I would still have the HP available to sub up, and this game would have been a wrap either way. Victini tries to come in, and Blue Flare doesn't even break my sub because I'm so bulky, and Zero's just going to win the game. And with that, we win the Draft Championship League, the DCL, and this is a really important win for me, honestly, because I haven't won a major team tournament since 2020, despite, you know, making playoffs in quite a few of them. So having this win finally in like a modern age, it feels good. 2020 is a long time ago, so that's a long time without a tournament, a team tournament win. I did win World Cup earlier this year with US West, but going back to back with that into DCL, so basically sweeping all of the Smogon team tournaments this year, it was really important to me. So that's why I decided to go so hard in the prep, and I decided to share all of the like backup builds that I build, like initial builds, testing builds, just so you can understand how much work went into this season. Obviously, I'm sure other people also did a similar thing, also put in the same amount of work, but I just wanted to show this is kind of like my process when I'm like super truly tryharding a tournament. And yeah, so overall, I'm pretty happy with my performance. I really wanted to limit my losses to 1 this season or 0. Unfortunately, some hacks occurred. Wasn't able to fulfill that, but still 6-3 is a good record. Not gonna complain too hard, especially since we won the chip. You know, how can you complain about that, right? But yeah, overall, pretty happy with the season. Really happy with my teammates. Honestly, this roster was really, really strong. I feel like other captains kind of dropped the ball in this during the auction. We got a lot of steals, like 7k Nick. Was it like 6k Bacon? Like, these are players that should be going for more. But hey, I'm not going to complain. It was a very fun team. You know, everyone's trying. That's always nice. A nice thing about team tours when everyone's trying, it's just such a nice competitive atmosphere. I really enjoy that sort of thing. Anyways, I've yapped for quite a long time now. That's going to be all for me. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.